Men of Reddit, what about men confuses you? Everything. I don't know how I got this far. Same. I was raised by a single mother. I don't understand just about everything guys do as a group, and I get super uncomfortable around more than one or two of them anyway. Why is it so hard to make friends as adults? It was so easy when I was a kid, even as a teenager. But now everybody wants to either sell me something or make me work for free. Like everyone I meet just wants to talk business, usually bad business. I can make female friends, but not male friends. This speaks to me. I have lots of female friends and can regularly get them to hang out, but making commitments with guy friends is impossible. Then I'll meet a cool guy and try to find a time to hang out, and nothing. Loud mufflers. They don't make your Honda sound like a Ferrari. They make it sound like a broken Honda. On that note, people who repeatedly rev their Harleys at stoplights are pretty annoying too. The men that are scared to hang out one-on-one because someone might think we're on a date. It's real, look it up. Weird. I prefer one-on-one hanging with good friends. We have our shtick, and adding more people tends to skew the good times. When I'm standing at a urinal peeing, and a guy comes up to use the one right next to me, and there are clearly open urinals further down the row. Why do this? Don't you know you're breaking men's restroom etiquette? A guy at my work not only does this, but will start talking. Why do you pee all over the seat and not clean it? I get when you have to go badly and no time to lift the seat, but you have to know you made a mess, and I'm sure when you walk into a piss-covered stall, you also get pissed. Especially when they do it in their own house. Over at a friend's house and there's piss splattered on the floor or wall around the toilet. Dude, if you can't get it all in the pot, just sit down. It's your own house. You're pissing all over your own house. I don't get it. I'm not hitting on your GF. I'm just trying to see if our answers for the homework are the same. I was talking to a girl about a project we had to do for a graduate class, and I was asking her for help with one specific part of it. While I was messaging her through Facebook, I got another message from her boyfriend that said, "Stop messaging my girlfriend and worry about yourself." He was a cop who had graduated from college like a year before. I said to her, I think your boyfriend just messaged me. I sent her the screen cap of his message and she apologized for him. And I'm assuming she talked to him. And every time I saw him, he'd give me the stink eye or something. They eventually got married. I hope that's going well. Dudes who don't like being asked out by women and dudes who don't like being complimented by other men or women they aren't interested in. Man, I wish I would get asked out by a woman. I'm too much of an introvert to even initiate small talk, though I do have female friends. Why can't we have a close guy friend without being labeled as gay? I don't understand why it gets called a bromance either. Like, this is a dude I care about who cares about me. That's it. Disclaimer, nothing wrong with being gay. I would just prefer to be called what I am. You need to clarify with everyone else that your close male friend is just a bro. He's just a bro. Why so many things have to be a competition? It's exhausting. Because dominance, bro. Guys who act like you're a weak whining pea for not putting up with being forced to work overtime for no benefit or other kinds of "I get treated like crap in my career, I'm such an alpha provider" behavior. My boyfriend rants daily about this. He's a machinist, and most of his co-workers are 60 plus, who cannot fathom why he would want to go home after working his 40 hours. The best part is that the other guys will talk about how the OT is ridiculous and unnecessary, and that they 100% aren't working it because they want to stick it to the man. Then they come in every Saturday. Lol, just bizarre. The need or want to one-up someone. Like, congrats dude, you can bench 250. You need to berate me because I can only bench 190? You bench 190? Pfft, I bench 185. Weakling, I max out at 85. The need to look and act manly. Like there's a video by College Humor called The Straightest Guy Ever that describes what I'm talking about. Everyone has their preferences, but they don't need to flaunt it in an extreme way. I've recently discovered that this is the reason I don't like gay men. Most of them are just people and perfectly fine to be around, except when they are explosively annoying with flaunting just how gay they are. I have 2 co-workers who are gay men, one in the former category and one in the latter. The one in the latter category is nice enough, but his voice makes me want to rip my own ears off. How can you talk for ages about your great new car, which you will then drive 10 minutes to work and back on a street with speed limits? They might occasionally, and very illegally, decide to actually test it. My grandpa told me once that when he was younger, one of his friends got a Shelby Cobra, which is an exceedingly fast car to begin with, but this friend had just taken it to a shop in another state for some kind of engine upgrade. On the way back, they encountered an empty stretch of highway and decided to see how fast it really go. Somewhere around 160 miles per hour, while still accelerating quite quickly, they passed a cop car who turned his lights on. The driver looks in the mirror and says, "We can outrun this guy easily, but they'll set up roadblocks anyway and I don't want my car wrecked over this." So they pull over, which at this speed probably took a few miles. Officer eventually catches up, pulls over in front of them, gets out, and first thing he says is, "What kind of car is this?" He looks around the outside a bit, asks the driver to get out and open the hood. He inspects that for a few minutes, then closes it. Asks if he can get in the driver's seat. Asks if he can turn it on. He does. Lets it run for a minute. Turns it off, gets out, tells them, "You boys better slow down. Wouldn't want to meet a traffic cop, would you?" Grins, gets back in his own car, and drives off. Dudes who can do one-night stands. I did it once, and never again. Too intimate of a connection to do that with someone who I don't know or care about with my heart. Or maybe I'm a weenie though. Nah, it just ain't your thing. I've never done it, but I don't think it's mine either. How some get so invested in their sports team when the roster changes every year and few of the players are actually from their town. Also dudes who think catcalling isn't gross and creepy. I'd say that most sport fans don't really care where the athletes come from and minor roster changes. It's really about the community, rooting for something to succeed, the thrill of victory, and many other reasons. I don't know about catcallers since I'm not one of them. They probably think they're doing nothing wrong. Why do sundresses drive me crazy? Every time my wife wears one, I'm ready to go all day. I second this. I'm not married, but there's something so uniquely beautiful about a woman in a sundress, especially if it's tied into a larger bohemian-style outfit. Butterflies. Why do we tend to bottle things up? Because at one point when we shared our issues, we didn't get the desired response. They thought it was a joke and laughed it off, or laughed at us. For others, they received heavy backlash, or perceived to be, and suffered the consequences for faults that may or may not be our own. Or that we received little to no response due to being unable to understand what's conflicting us. It only fell on deaf ears and had no meaning. It's also seen as a sign of weakness to admit to these problems. Then we fear that other people that we cannot bear knowing of our weaknesses taking advantage of it. We would rather die in this case. As a result, we do, slowly, and sometimes surely. Talking sports, I've never had any interest about watching any games unless I know someone in it, that is my kids. As a 40-something guy, it's awkward for me being in social situations with acquaintances because that is the go-to conversation starter. I'm like this, and it's even worse because I used to play sports. Even when I played baseball, I never watched professional games. I'll watch American football now, but I mostly keep up for the social aspect. The games are definitely fun to watch, but my brother and father can spout stats all day, and I've never been like that. Why we smell something awful and decide others need to share the experience. I think that's a human thing. It's one of my sister's hobbies. Why is it so common for men to punch holes in the wall? I don't get it. It's how you test for studs. How can you guys go a day? without jerking it. Sometimes I just got more stuff going on, and by the time I finally get some downtime, I just want to sleep. Personally, I don't get all the hype around cars, sports, or working out, but it's cool if you like them. I'm just confused. I feel like most people don't actually like working out, but like the added benefits to their lives. At least that is why I go. Once you start doing it consistently, you enjoy it. If I don't go for a while, I miss my muscles being sore. It's weird, honestly, and I don't understand it, but it happened at one point. The constant heckling for lack of facial hair. Like you don't have to make fun of me for shaving, dude. You could try to protest, but they'll just accuse you of shaving face. Alpha male behavior. Made even worse by the fact that the alpha wolf thing was wrong, and the guy who came up with it spent decades trying to let people know he was wrong. Our ability to transform an irrelevant topic like ants or something like that into a 3-hour-long discussion about them. Lifted trucks and rolling coal. I really cannot understand how any adult thinks that rolling coal is not only acceptable, but a good idea. Why do some guys get angry for no reason when they're drunk? Everyone's just trying to have a good time. Stop ruining the fun for everyone and chill out. Chances are they were already angry when they took the first sip. Bottling up stuff makes for a horrible mix with any substance, especially one raising testosterone levels. Yep, I've always operated under the assumption that alcohol removes impulse control, so if you're already angry, you just won't suppress it any longer. How we can get into huge arguments, then 10 minutes we're best friends, not like women, where they'll get emotional and settle it. Us men will just come to a silent agreement. Also, how we can just stare at, let's say, a wall for like an hour. Hey, sorry I'm late, I was looking at my wall for an hour after I got out of the shower. Who are these men staring at walls? Lol. It's not so much staring at the wall, as you happen to be facing a wall when your mind simply shuts down for around an hour. What is your biggest, wait, why the heck did I do this, autopilot moment? Was filling up a salt shaker over the sink so I didn't spill any salt anywhere. As soon as I filled up the salt shaker, I immediately turned it over and dumped all the salt in the sink. It was extremely deliberate, and I have no idea why I did it. I've done this while cracking eggs. I got the bowl next to the sink, crack the egg on the side of the sink, open it directly over the drain, and then stare at the drain for several seconds after the egg has slimed down into the pipes, wondering how this isn't the first time I've done this. In middle school, I went to my locker to get my books for the last class of the day, French. Autopiloted my jacket and bag, went home an hour early. I did the same thing back in 7th grade. I thought second to last period was last period, left an hour early, and caught myself before I got on the train because I didn't see anyone in the station that I knew. I had mouthwash in my mouth and went to look for something in the vanity drawer. I opened it and, out of reflex when I looked down, spat all the mouthwash into it, all over cotton buds, band-aids, my nail clippers, etc. I woke up kind of thirsty, but I thought I'd do my morning routine before grabbing a glass of water. While I was using mouthwash, I got distracted and swallowed it. A good thing it wasn't a large amount. My route to college takes me past my old high school. Without fail, at least once a year, I'll turn into the parking lot at the high school, try to park in my space, and then realize I graduated in 2008. You've been going to college for 8 years? Yeah, he keeps having to repeat classes because he goes to high school instead of lectures. I've been waking up at 4:30 to 5 FM for school since I was about 10. When I was around 12, I woke up, went to the bathroom to pee, took my shirt off as I was peeing, and after I was done, threw my shirt in the toilet, only to realize 2 seconds later what I had done. Why did you have to wake up that early when you were 10? I had to get up that early as well. We had early morning classes that started at 6, and I lived 15 minutes out of town, so I was usually up by 5. I put my cereal back in the fridge with the milk after I make breakfast. I once poured cereal into my full cup of coffee, then wondered why my cereal bowl was empty when I started to pour the milk. Woke up early and still super sleepy. Went to go take a shower. Stuck my hand, still holding my towel, into the shower to test the water temperature. I've worn socks in the shower before doing the same thing. I spent hours making chicken soup from scratch. A whole raw chicken, herbs, chunks of veggies, all simmering away to make the perfect soup possible. When it was finally ready, I set a strainer in the sink, poured it in, and watched as my beautiful soup disappeared down the drain. When I was younger, my mom bought orange juice with pulp, and I hated pulp. So, making a huge deal out of it, she grabbed the strainer and poured all the orange juice through the strainer into the sink, leaving only pulp. Then she got mad at me. Cracked an egg into the sink and put the shell in my food. I stared at the food for a solid 10 seconds afterwards. I don't know what I expected. I don't know what I expected. I moved houses, and it took me a solid 2 months to stop driving home to my old house. "Hey Ma, old man Yuri's here again. Quick, hide in the cabinet. I think we can whack him in the head when he comes through the door." "It's just the space guy. Let him be. He'll leave in an hour and 48 minutes. Whenever I take the bus, I roll the tickets up into little tubes, a habit I've had since I was a kid. On several occasions of autopilot gone completely wrong, I've got off the bus, popped the rolled up ticket in my mouth, reached for a lighter, and set it on fire. If you're ever going out with a smoker friend and you guys get hammered, turn a cig in his pack. Autopilot will kick in and you're lighted by the filter. I am ashamed to admit I have also done this. To myself, on more than one occasion. I am a terrible smoker. I used to work 60-ish hours a week when I was a retail manager. And there was one time where I woke up and got dressed, drove an hour and a half to work at 8 a.m. and started preparing to open the store. My co-worker arrived and was very confused as to why I was there. Turns out it was a day off for me, and me just autopiloted to work. Yeah, I've done something similar before. I got home from work, had dinner, and fell asleep on the couch. I woke up and checked the time on my phone, 7:15. Oh crap, I'm so late for work! So I got ready really quickly and ran out the door. I'm thinking to myself, the neighborhood seems pretty lively for this time of the morning. I was halfway to work before I realized I'd woken up at 7:15 p.m., not a.m. Idiot. Usually when I drop something, I finish what I'm doing first before I pick the item back up. For example, once, I bought a grilled cheese sandwich, and as I was walking to my table, the entire grilled cheese just slid off the plate onto the floor. Instead of picking it up, I walked to my table first, set my plate down before returning 10 feet to where my sandwich had fallen. I have no idea why, but my brain just autopilots me to finish doing what originally intended to do. Once when I was around 10, I went into the bathroom to take a shower. So I turned on the water, took off my shirt, my pants, shoes and socks, and stepped into the shower to let the warm water wash over me. At which point I looked down and wondered why I hadn't removed my underwear. I did that with socks. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, but I knew something wasn't right. I looked down and bam! Wet socks in the shower. I carry a bottle of oil-based perfume in my bag, and a bottle of eye drops too. Squirted the perfume into my eye. When I was little, I was at my grandma's house and wandered into the bathroom and saw her perfume on the counter. I picked it up to inspect it and pointed it right at my face and pressed down on the top, so it sprayed right into my little eyes. It hurt and burned so much, but I was scared of getting into trouble for messing with grandma's stuff, so I didn't tell anyone and just sobbed into a towel for a while. Don't know if it counts, but I spent hours on a digital drawing where I only had to draw on one side because it was like mirrored in the middle, and what I drew on the left ended up mirrored on the right. Later, when I went to brush my teeth, I only brushed the left side of my mouth like the other side would automatically get clean too. You could have shot a homemade before-after commercial for toothpaste. After a long day, I grabbed my things and left my office. I got down to the metro and tried to scan my card a few times without anything happening. Then I looked down and saw that I was holding a stapler. I had grabbed my stapler instead of my ID badge metro card. I had to explain that to the security guy to let me back in to exchange my stapler for my badge. I have a security card for work, and every single day I pull out my debit card and hold it against the scanner for 10 seconds, wondering why it isn't working. Then, on the way home, I stand for 10 seconds wondering why my security pass isn't working on the scanner for the train card. After brushing teeth, I was running my mouth. Usually I would look up, gargle, look down, spit. But I looked up and spat, and all the toothpaste covered water went all over my face. You just made a 4 hours class very funny. Too funny because I laughed while everyone was tomb silent. Tried to unlock my front door with my car clicker. I laughed at myself. Then tried to unlock my fridge with my work fob. Why did autopilot me think the fridge was locked? I wish our work fridge required a fob to get in. Stolen lunches are no joke. Being able to keep a log of everyone who accessed the work fridge would be so cool. We had an issue with stolen creamer once. Would have definitely been helpful then. I took the subway from my college to the other side of town to where a girl I was dating lived. I was one stop away when I realized that I was supposed to have transferred twice to get onto the train to go to my parents' house, about an hour ride north. I'm so confused by the way this is worded. Where were you trying to go? He rode to his GF, then realized he was supposed to go to his parents. Every time I walk into my kitchen, I open the fridge, even if I don't plan to eat or cook. In the back of my mind, I always hope I find something amazing to snack on, but I'm always disappointed. I do this all the time. I just open the fridge and look in it for a few seconds, close it, I do the same with the freezer, and then just walk away. I'm a heathen who makes instant coffee. I opened up a brand new jar of it, spooned some into my coffee mug, picked up the kettle and poured the boiling water right into the whole jar of instant coffee. At least that jar of sludge smelled delicious. Getting out the card to pay for something, putting away your wallet, using the card, getting your wallet back out and putting the card away. Wondering why you do this. I do this with cash. Take out a 20, put the wallet away, get change, realize I already put the wallet away, put change in pocket next to wallet, fix after I leave store. I got contacts about a year ago. Every now and then, if I can't see something clearly, I bring my hand near my ear like I'm going to lift or adjust my glasses. Did you just smack yourself in the face? I was pushing up my glasses. You aren't wearing glasses. I know. Shut up. Near daily occurrence for me. Contacts are still pretty new. Got up at 5 a.m. like I was going to work. Took a shower, washed my face, brushed my teeth, the whole 9 yards. I was off that day and didn't find out until I tried to clock in and the machine wouldn't let me. When I was in middle school and my sisters were in high, our school bus stops were just across the street from our house. The buses came at 7:25 and 7:35. None of us liked getting up that early. If one person overslept, it wasn't an issue, but if two or more did, then there were pile-ups and some shoving as we fought to get ready. Anyway, one morning, I wake up at 7:15. Seeing the time, I go running down the hall to Sister One's room. Sister One, wake up! We overslept and we're going to miss the bus! She rolls over and sleepily mutters, "We just switched to daylight savings time. Go back to bed, it's like 6 something. Feeling stupid, I go back to sleep. I wake up at 7:10. See the time, go running down the hall to Sister Two's room. Sister Two, wake up, we're going to miss the bus! Head still buried in the pillow, she wakes up enough to say, "Light, go back to bed. It's Sunday." Not my biggest, but very regular. I autopilot out the bread, butter, plate, and a dessert spoon. Then I get to actually spreading the bread and look stupidly at the spoon in my hand. Found my wallet in my sock drawer once. Took me like 2 weeks and a lot of panic to find it. Parents of Reddit, why are you disappointed in your adult child? He got a $200,000 inheritance when his father passed away 2 years ago. He's broke now. Did he do any good with the money? Any assets to show for it? Any chance there was a Montgomery Brewster style clause in the will? He put 80k on a down payment on a house and the rest in stocks which he lost. He's 24 years old and has a full-blown meth addiction that started in the last 6 months. He was fired from the job he got at 18 because he was high and manic. Sidebar, his manager was the one that introduced him to meth. Since then, he has dedicated his time to either finding or using meth. He's been arrested 3 times, spent 30 days in jail, and continues to use even though he is on probation. He's angry because we will not allow him to live with us while he's using. He's now homeless. He broke into our house and stole some of his father's sports memorabilia to support his habit. Some of it's not replaceable and very sentimental. He is a shell of the human we knew 6 months ago, both figurative and literally. He cannot hold a normal conversation and is constantly twitching. We've offered to get him help, but he is convinced that the drugs have set him free, and we are all living in a delusional world where we have to work and conform to society. It is killing us. On the other hand, our daughter, 23, just graduated college in June with a paralegal degree and has decided to go to law school. She's afraid to celebrate her success because she doesn't want to make him feel bad or upset him. But screw him for taking that away from her. Not that it would make you feel better, but if you don't already, you should know how incredibly common this exact story is. I was addicted to opiates at 17 to 18. Parents kicked me out right after high school, was homeless for a bit, and I got arrested for a burglary. After multiple rehabs, I got sober when I was 19. I'm 21 now. You guys did a good thing saying he can't live with you. It might be best if you never let him back. I visit my parents probably once every 2 weeks, and we have a great relationship now. Probably due to us not being under the same roof because my mom and I tend to butt heads. I spend a lot of time with addicts and hear a lot of different stories from living in recovery houses. The best I could say is just continue to love him unconditionally and support him when he does eventually try to get clean, because he will. Some people get high for 6 months and are ready to stop, others many years, but do not enable him. Remember, he is not a bad person, he is a sick person. I truly feel for you. Just thinking about the times my mom has said she has accepted that her baby boy is going to die makes me tear up. Stay strong. Not me, but my uncle. He's a very kind and hard-working man who did everything for his sons and my cousins. While the younger ones are decent and successful persons, the oldest one was always a piece of work. He never finished school or worked in his entire life, and at the same time belittled my uncle for his work. Said things like he wouldn't even leave his bed for the money my uncle makes, that he is stupid for working for someone else and hadn't understood life. They always believed in him, gave him money so he could open his own stores, or bought him expensive cars or stuff so he would get motivated and do something with his life. After about 10 years, he's 28 now, and a lot of money, he asked for it again. My uncle told him basically that he wants to see a business plan first and that he has to wait about 3 months because they're renovating the house. He threw a tantrum and left for a while. In the meantime, his parents renewed the first floor, walls, floor, bathroom, including furniture in his and his brother's rooms. Guys, one day he came back while nobody was home and just lost it. He called my uncle and screamed something about how he has to wait for his money while they were spending it for themselves, and then he smashed the place. Everything new and old. Ripped out the floor and destroyed the bathroom. There was water everywhere and smashed in walls. He slashed furniture and destroyed his brother's electronics. He had to be so angry. I was speechless when I saw it. They threw him out, took his keys, and haven't heard from him since. But before he fought with his father and called his mother a bitch. Without an own opinion. It just broke my uncle's heart. He isn't the same man anymore. This broke my heart. I hope your uncle is doing okay now. He must have worked really hard to renovate a house like that. Thank you so much. He is very quiet now and just sad, unhappy. I can't describe it. The lights are just out. He sees himself as a failure and is thinking the day and night about what he had done wrong. He used to laugh with his whole body, and when we were little, we would imitate the bouncing of his belly, and he would chase us out of the room until we couldn't laugh anymore. Now he just smiles and lowers his eyes. There's nothing left. The human garbage took all of his energy. Pathological liar. 33 years old, and he would rather walk 10 miles to tell a lie than to stand still and tell the truth. His ex-wives all found out the same thing. Wives. Are you kidding me? He is either seriously good-looking or just that good of a liar. I don't think I want to know which it actually is. My son is 25 and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at around 15 years old, maybe younger. After he became too old and too big for me to manage his meds, he refused to take them, and his life has been a roller coaster of disasters ever since. Between prison time, juvie and adult, bad decisions, suicidal ideation, drug use, fathering 2 children he doesn't see, same mom, and insisting on making up reasons to not speak to me, I'm done. Because honestly, there's nothing I can do for him. At this point, I'm just waiting to get a phone call on where I need to go to identify the body. As someone with the bipolar, so I feel for you. He went off his meds once for almost 2 months, and it was the scariest and most painful time in my life. I can't imagine what you feel. Please accept a hug from a stranger. He's 20 and refuses to go to college or get a job. He lives with his mom, so all I can do is talk to him about it. I fear for his future. Like we, his parents, aren't immortal, and he doesn't seem to have self-preservation skills. My little brother was the same way. He played video games instead of doing his homework and graduated the summer after the rest of his class. He was upset that everyone was going on to college. My parents wouldn't let him go. My sister got a job at a frozen yogurt place and convinced him to apply, and he eventually did as he grew up over years. Then she dragged him to a coffee shop. When he was 22, he heard about a training program. I think my mom told him about it, and he applied and got in and did very well. Now he has a full-time job that pays more than my mom's teaching job. He's honestly so happy and proud of himself, even though he still lives with them at 25. And it's actually nice visiting because my dad doesn't verbally abuse him as hard anymore. Some people just take extra time to get there. Keep encouraging him and showing him paths that don't seem humiliating. Maybe eventually he will put in some effort and realize he can do it. I'm not disappointed in my 18-year-old, but I sure wish I knew how to activate him. He graduated in May, has no desire to go to college, and no real aspirations at all. He's pretty much been in his room on his phone since. He's struggled for many years with anxiety, which we're treating, and I know a lot of things are difficult for him. But man, I wish I knew how to get him excited about something, anything, whether it's a job or a hobby or a plan or whatever. At 18, I was exactly the same. Didn't really care about anything. Certainly didn't feel like an adult. I'm just shy of 23 now, and I did come out of it, slowly and painfully. At the same time, not everyone I know did. Some of my friends are in exactly the same place they were at the end of high school, except that they go to a job instead of school. So you can't just sit back and hope he figures it out either. I'd suggest helping him cultivate a healthy personal life more so than pushing him to start making money, honestly. Hobbies are a great help, especially if they push him to be a little more social. I spent absurd amounts of time as a teen holed up in my room with my guitar, and that skill eventually led me to branching out and meeting people at jam sessions. My son is 24 and, by some standards, a disappointment. He has a degree and no job. He struggles with motivation and his sleep patterns are terrible. I don't think he has a plan to move forward with his life. But he is so kind. Every time he makes dinner, because I know you must be tired, or comes and gives me a hug when I get home from work, makes it possible for me to keep going. It sounds like he's got a bit of depression. I'd keep an eye out and see what you can do. I may be wrong, but it's worth confirming or otherwise. He's 42, lives with his dad, is 6 years into a 2-year degree, and has gone through 4 decent cars in the last 6 months. His dad bought the cars and he trashed them. He's also threatened physical abuse to his dad. He disowned his older sister over a political argument on Facebook. She said I'm leaving this discussion before we say things we'll regret, and he tried to forbid it, saying if she left, she was disrespecting him and was no longer related to him. I think at one point, someone got to figure it out that he doesn't know how to drive. Really, it's like, just drive normally and don't hit anything. 16-year-old kids can do it. I'm disappointed in my son because he's too much like me. He's a solid introvert who is afraid to ask for help and doesn't want to bother people, even with very legitimate requests. He is an expert procrastinator. I remember being that age and being so much like that. I'm not sure how I got through university, but I've been a successful engineer for 30 years, so I've still got a lot of hope for him. Also, both my kids vape and smoke. We've been anti-smokers for all our adult lives, and I'm sad to see them choose to do something negative like that. They both want to quit, but it's a tough road. Dude, hop on that right now. I had the same issues, and it led to me failing out of school, drinking, and a suicide attempt, all at age 20. I wasn't confronting my fear of asking people for help, and it was eating me alive. The only thing that snapped me out of it was actually failing out of school and needing to tell my parents. Then it was 2 or 3 solid years of therapy and stuff like that. Seriously, you got to get in there and see if he really needs the help I needed. He's 31 and has been a hardcore addict, meth, heroin, since age 15. I'm disappointed and we're estranged, but he is still my son and I love him. No drive, no ambition, and no work ethic. He's 25. He peaked in 6th grade. Parents of Reddit, why are you disappointed in your adult child? He's a deadbeat dad for his first daughter, which means I can't see my first granddaughter anymore. Has been in and out of jail since the age of 11. Is a multiple offense convicted felon as an adult who will steal from anyone, myself and his mother included, and has threatened to have most of his family members killed. He is known to carry stolen firearms and frequently uses his brother's name to try to avoid being caught. He's a drug addict, living with a drug-addicted girl, and they now have had 2 more children together, both of whom suffer from the effects of their parents' drug addictions, fetal drug syndrome. He's a deadbeat dad for his first daughter, which means I can't see my first granddaughter anymore. Why not? It should be possible for you to have a relationship with the granddaughter and her mother. Well, I mean, yeah, it's possible, but that's obviously not how it played out here. The mother may have moved, decided to cut ties with the in-laws for any number of reasons, or just wanted a fresh start as a single parent. My parents are endlessly grateful that when my brother broke it off with his ex, that they were able to keep seeing his daughter. Even now that he's terminated his parental rights, his ex stays close to my parents and they babysit sometimes as much as 2 to 3 overnights a week. They're a wonderful source of love and stability for her, but they know that they're lucky to have the ex want them around her so much. She could easily have gone the other way with it when my bro went off the rails, and as much as it would have broken their hearts, they wouldn't have blamed her for moving or feeling like she needed a fresh start, or even worrying that since they raised my bro, that they could have a negative impact on my niece. My mum's disappointed that I left a £33,000 a year job for a £28,000 job because I had 2 mental breakdowns, even though everything is now perfect. Sometimes we just have to get on with it. Your mental health is worth way more than £5,000 a year. As long as you have enough to get by, you made the right call. I'm still not sure what my parents think of me. I was the promised child who got 99th percentile on aptitude tests in kindergarten, aced tests, memorized the presidents by age 4, at my dad's insistence, and ended up just blundering my way through school because what started as a bad habit of not doing homework eventually amalgamated into depression-driven apathy about education. I dropped out of college and I've spent more of my time in therapy learning how to be a good person and be happy, which does make my mom happy. But I can feel my entire extended family's disappointment in me that I chose to work an 8-to-5 job and just live in an apartment with my cat. On the bright side, I'm more confident in my life choices than I have ever been, and I wouldn't trade the positive mindset I've been working so hard on for any amount of work discipline. Can't blame you. Mental health is everything when it comes to a stable life. Being happy is something that more people should prioritize. My dad always told me, I don't care if you dig ditches as your career, as long as you're happy doing it. I'm taking some risks now to try and do what will make myself happy in the future, and I've not looked back. Reading this has strengthened my resolve to do what makes me happy. I sincerely hope you have a happy life. Oh, good timing. I have to be semi-vague, but hopefully you get the gist. My middle daughter is 19, but we've had issues her entire life. I strongly suspect BPD narcissism. Currently, her infant child has been removed from her care by CPS for multiple reasons, notably her erratic behavior she showed and continues to show, and also heavy marijuana use. We suspect other drugs at play, but have zero proof. Instead of cooperating to get her child back, she's fought, kicking and screaming every step of the way, making it much harder than necessary. At the same time, blaming her mother and vilifying her to the point that she has lied to CPS in an attempt to have them remove her 4-year-old sister from her mother's care. Calling old friends and family, giving them a hugely false story in an attempt to alienate her mother and have zero friends and help. It's a giant mess she's created, and refuses to take any blame or acknowledge that she's the issue at all. The weed could be making it worse. As I learned a while back in Reddit, psychosis and weed don't mix. My mom is extremely disappointed with me because I'm not having kids. It was my sole purpose in life. Good for you. I ended up with kids, but after 7 years of getting to know and enjoy being with my wife, I fully support anyone who doesn't want kids. It's important to be you for you and not someone else. I'm in the middle of becoming estranged from my parents. They don't approve of how I'm raising my sons, and they can't even bring themselves to be around them. Our last attempt at a family vacation left my sisters yelling at my parents and then storming off. Their complaint is that I don't have any boundaries for the kids. I do have boundaries. They just aren't the same as my dad had when I was growing up. He was a hard ass with major anger issues. He threw me up a stairwell once when I left my boots behind at a park. Due to living in that household, I'm attempting to let my kids grow up knowing that making mistakes is part of life. You just have to learn from it. In any event, my children are monsters, and he can't get over that, so I'm about to cut him and my stepmom out of our lives. I had a childhood like this. My dad died long before my son was born, but I watched him give my sister crap about how she raised her boys. Like you, she and my brother-in-law were very loving, tolerant parents, and it bothered my dad. I, on the other hand, learned that kids can be great via my nephews. When you're raised to think of your child's self as a problem, it's easy to adopt a children are problems outlook. When I have a thorny parenting question or issue, I call my sister for advice and experience, since both of her sons turned out well-adjusted and high-functioning. Hits her husband, calls him worthless and leaves him alone with the baby for days without telling him she's going anywhere. He'll come home from work and she's gone for 3 days in a 5-star hotel with a spa treatment. It's awful. My parents are disappointed in me because I won't pretend I wasn't damaged from their abuse. My dad does this annoying thing where he acts clueless as to why his kids are weird or why we don't talk to him like a normal child would. I don't know, man. Maybe being beaten and berated for your whole childhood makes you weird. My mom held getting a degree as one of the pinnacle achievements you can do because it was such a big deal to her going back to school and getting her degree in her 40s. As someone who works in IT, I dropped out about a year into school and haven't looked back. That was 10 years ago. I hid that I dropped out for many years before I actually told her. She was disappointed. But in my opinion, the astronomical cost of a degree does not have a good return on investment, and in IT, I've worked up to a very high salary level without one. Certifications, mentors, learning on the job, and at home. To me, a 4-year degree doesn't make much logical sense in a fast-moving field like this one. my 19-year-old daughter failed out in her first semester of college. Not a big deal. Sometimes freshmen get overwhelmed and don't do so hot in their classes. My daughter, however, just decided to not show up to the classes that weren't theatre related, so she failed math and English, which she could have aced. Now, had she owned up to this, there would have been little issue. Lesson learned, do better on probation and pass the classes next semester. What she did do was just not register for classes for the next semester and try her luck at living in the dorms illegally. Somehow it took the college 3 months to catch up with her. She finally fessed up in March. By that time, she had been trespassing at the college for those 3 months. We had to beg the college to not throw her into prison. We were literally on the phone with college officials for an hour begging them to just let her come home. She screwed up, but she's learned her lesson. Luckily, if you can call it that, her grandmother rushed to her rescue and paid off her outstanding balance on her bill, $6,000 for the 3 months she lived on campus, boarding and food card. Her grandmother, my mom, then proceeded to tell my daughter she never had to return to us. We were evil people, and she would protect her from the likes of us. My daughter, who used to call me every night and called me anytime she had problems, cut all ties with us, because facing her responsibilities wasn't a requirement anymore. We tried calling her, tried telling her we weren't angry and to just come home. Nothing doing. We would have been angry, but we would have worked it out. Instead, we became the bad guys in her fairy tale, and for the past 5 months, she's gone on shopping sprees, goofed off, and had the time of her life. I've seen her twice since it all happened. Both times, she treated me like an evil monster. Both times, I went home in tears, despising my mother more and more. My daughter is going back to school tomorrow like nothing ever happened. My mom is paying for it. You might be thinking, be grateful she's footing the bill. The problem with that is my oldest daughter has worked her ass off to get her degree, and my mom refused to help her because she's bisexual. She's doing this to get back at her for embarrassing her in front of her church. I refused to let the younger daughter get help from her because of this in the past. So my younger daughter also stabbed her older sister in the back by doing this. I'm so very disappointed in the entitled brat my daughter has become. And if I ever see my mother again, I'll wring her fat neck right in front of all those Christians in her church. I'm in my 30s and unmarried. My mum worries every time I take solo holidays. I'm sure she wishes I had a husband to go along. Also in my mid-30s and unmarried, not how I planned it, just how it worked out. My mum was horrified that I was going to take a solo road trip. My destination was 1,160 kilometers, 10.5 hours away, and ends up at my uncle and aunt's place, Vancouver to Calgary. We all wish there was a husband or friend to go along, but what do? Wait for it to happen? Nothing wrong with a solo vacation and enjoying life. I feel you. I'm the adult child. My parents want me to be happy in my career. In high school, my goal was to join the military and become a combat medic. I graduated in 2007 and would have likely deployed to Afghanistan upon completion of training. My parents really didn't want me to join the military because, like all parents, they didn't want me to go to war, yet they still supported me. As it worked out, I never did join the military and became a welder. I hate my job, and it's caused me a lot of stress and instability over the last 10 years. Every day I regret not following my dream. I know my dissatisfaction and regret with my job and life has disappointed my parents. However, I'm looking into a major career change, and they're fully supportive of that, in ways I can't begin to describe. Hopefully soon I can make them happy for me by being happy in my career. By my count, you're 30. Why not join now? Your count is correct. Joining now isn't really feasible, unfortunately. Life has happened and my commitments have grown. Among other things, I have a wife now, and we want to start a family soon. She's going back to school this fall, and we just bought a house. It wouldn't be fair to her to have to give up everything to follow me around the country for postings and training, or leave her alone for months at a time while I'm on deployment. The pay cut would be enormous too, somewhere around 80%. Much easier to deal with these things when you're younger, unattached, and not as settled down. I'm doing my schooling to get my certs that will let me apply to become a career firefighter. It's my new dream and will give me the job satisfaction I'm looking for. In the meantime, as a fallback, I'm looking into beginning a new trade with better earning potential, stability, working conditions, and work-life balance. Teachers of Reddit, what's the coolest thing you've ever confiscated from a child? Took a pair of handcuffs during second period today. Got a lot of grief when I walked into the office with them. Like handcuffs or handcuffs? Thinking about the kid more, they were probably the magic kind. A kid in my class had a BB gun. The VP noticed as he crossed the room. He took it out of the bag and was giving the kid a bollocking when he shot himself in the hand with it. The VP went mental and smashed it off the table. Kid's parents supposedly demanded the VP compensate them for said gun. Sure, the kid shouldn't have brought it to class. However, it's not his fault the VP didn't have any trigger discipline. Educational assistant, but whatever. A makeshift taser. This kid had rigged up a taser using a couple of 9-volt batteries, wire, tape, and some sort of button from what could have been a toy. It wasn't dropping kids, but it was enough to make you jump. I was impressed, but also wanted to pull the little one's arms off and slap the snot out of him with his own arms because he kept stabbing girls in the chest with it. Middle school kids are a weird point where they are too smart for children, but are certainly not human. Middle school kids are a weird point where they are too smart for children, but are certainly not human. This is truth. My kids are 3 years apart. I've been a parent of a middle school kid for 6 years, and I have 3 years left. I feel this in the very core of my being. One of my teachers took my yo-yo and tried to do a trick she once knew and smashed a window. One of my teachers took my yo-yo and said, "I was pretty good at this back in the day." He then proceeded to do about 5 tricks in succession. We were all impressed. I was a very casual, "You are," and he gave me this smug look and said, "Show me your best trick." I shamefully put the yo-yo back in my bag. I took 6 bullets off of a first grader. When I asked him where he got them, he said, "From the gun." I then asked how he got them out of the gun, and he made the movement with his hands that showed he ejected the shells. I took him to the office. While he was there, I checked his book bag to see if he had a gun in there. Nope, just a baggie full of credit cards with 15 different names on them. Nothing happened to the child or parent. A redback spider from the gently closed palm of a 7-year-old boy's hand, almost every recess for a month before I figured out a way to make him stop. He was never bitten. What made him finally stop? I told him I'd keep him down to repeat year 2 if he did it again, because it's not very smart to kidnap a venomous spider away from its family. Well, this is my time to shine. My co-worker and I had a mild prank war going on. Somehow the students caught wind and decided to instigate by stealing things from his room and taking it to mine, and vice versa. Here are some of the things I've had to take from them and return to him. His car keys, his entire desktop computer, portraits of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, pumpkins from his Halloween decorations, his desk chairs, his car keys, again, a student desk, his travel mug with his name on it. At this point, I'm convinced my co-worker just doesn't want his car. And somehow, in the 5 minutes between his class and mine, they managed to flip all the desks in his classroom upside down. I am not making this up. Live dragonflies. He was a little 4-year-old boy that would never listen to any of the rules and generally just cause a lot of trouble. Anyway, he would catch dragonflies without harming them. When you told him to release them, he would open his backpack and 2 or 3 dragonflies would fly out. You would not believe your eyes. Scorpion in a jar. The kid had put in leaves, twigs, and even some smaller bugs for it to eat. Made a real habitat. However, he was clumsy and had a top locker above a concrete floor. No way I was going to risk him smashing the jar and letting it loose in the corridor. Gave it back to him at the end of the day with very clear instructions it was not to return to school. I am in Australia, but in the south, so it wasn't a particularly venomous scorpion. The sting would have caused about the same level of irritation as a bee sting, as for someone non-allergic. During the summer between my 9th and 10th year, our area was invaded by these giant wasps that were at least 3 times the size of the normal paper wasps and yellow jackets we usually had. Huge, scary looking stuff that sounded like helicopters when they flew, and they were everywhere. I managed to catch one in a mason jar, and it was big enough to take up more than half the bottom of the jar when it was flying. I brought it to school to see if my biology teacher could ID it. He could not, but he kept it anyway. That was a pretty good response on your part. My son took his pet snake in a glass to school in 5th grade because his friends didn't believe he had a pet snake. He brought it in his DS game case, and upon revealing it, the majority of children apparently freaked out. His teacher also freaked out and sent him to the principal, who made him release it into the woods behind the school before they even called me. My son was upset, and I was livid to say the least, but nothing to be done at that point. I was the kid. An imitation gun that used to belong to my grandfather. The thing was ancient and was a simple single-shot percussion cap pistol. The more I think about it as an older, less stupid person, the more I worry that it was an actual gun, since he was a policeman. Never got it back, that's for sure. He never got it back? Surely it was worth more than a couple of dollars. Probably. Since I'm British, the school was pretty touchy around anything even resembling a firearm, and I never convinced my perpetually busy parents to go in and get it, since they wouldn't just give it back to me. Not a teacher, but my teacher took my Mighty Beans TM in 2010 and still hasn't given them back, so I'm guessing she thought they were pretty cool. What are those? Plastic toy jumping beans with magnets in them, so they jumped around in your hands. You were supposed to play marbles with them, but I don't know anyone who did. A duck's egg. It smelled horrible. She told me she found it in the park. It was winter. She was keeping it in her hat, hoping it was still alive. Sorry, child. A raw egg spray painted silver. A live bird caught outside. A homemade hand buzzer. A luchador mask. When I was a casual teacher, I confiscated a knife from a 5-year-old. He threatened me with it when I tried to get him to do his work. It was my first week. How did you get it off him, if you don't mind me asking? Grabbed him around the wrist and took it pretty much straight away without really processing that it was probably the wrong thing to do. I had the knife before the shock wore off that a 5-year-old pulled a knife on me. He threw a tantrum on the floor, crying and demanding his knife back. It was a tough school, but kids very rarely got actually hurt. While they might have had stupid things on them, they weren't really willing to use them. Not a teacher, but one time a teacher confiscated a kid's PSP. It got stolen overnight, so she had to buy him a new one. Physics was tense from then on out. Damn, that sucks. Unless he stole it and then made the teacher buy him another one. Boom, instant profits. That happened to me back in grade school with my TI-83 calculator. I left it on my desk, so the teacher put it on his desk to give to me later, and someone stole it off the teacher's desk. Those things were like $100. Later that day, the idiot tried to sell me my own calculator. I just showed him my initials carved into the back of it and kept it. There was a big conspiracy of exam paper trading going on around the area my school is located in. Some kid figured out a way to get the independent exam that several of the schools would purchase each year. He sold copies to anyone who would buy them, including our students. We confiscated a copy of the exam with a different school's logo on it before it was issued to our students. Eventually, my school figured out we couldn't buy exams from the seller anymore, as the papers for most subjects, English, Math, Gen, etc., always made it to the kids through the black market. To my knowledge, the seller was never caught. I'm just imagining a young Edward Snowden leaking documents, then hiding out behind the bike sheds. My teacher confiscated a phone case. Just the phone case, not the phone. Maybe there would be a business selling decoy phones. At my school, phones were not allowed at all. If you were caught, it would be taken away for 3 months. So a lot of people would keep old or broken phones in their bags so that if their real phone made a noise and the teacher wanted to confiscate it, they would just hand in the decoy phone. It was quite funny hearing an iPhone or BlackBerry notification sound, then seeing the teacher take in an old flip phone or Nokia 3310. My teacher confiscated Vaseline because they were convinced it was an electronic device. Frozen water bottle full of frozen margarita he was passing to his friends. 8th grade homeroom, so 13-year-old sharing a cocktail at 8 a.m? It was actually kind of clever hiding in plain sight. It did just look like a bottle of frozen water, but my teacher sense told me something was up. Girl in my high school got busted with a water bottle of vodka. Got busted because she kicked the bottle across the floor to another student instead of, passing it in plain view like people would do with a normal water bottle. The odd behavior tipped the teacher. Girl had been bringing it for years without getting busted. A kid at mine got caught with Everclear in a shampoo bottle on an overnight school trip at a hotel. He had forgotten to move it from the in-room fridge to the shower during room inspection. A teacher looked the entire room over and found nothing wrong. Even congratulated the kids on not having anything they shouldn't. Then, on the way out, half-jokingly said something along the lines of, "And I bet y'all must have all sorts of prohibited stuff in the fridge," and opened it, noticing the shampoo bottle. Knives, drugs, boxing gloves brought to school for a fight club, homemade bong with no cone piece, shiv made from an off-cut of some type of acrylic made in manual arts, spear made from a bed frame. I've taken a dog chain, a massive sharpened tent peg, razors and sharpened sticks off one kid. Yesterday at school, my deputy principal also confiscated what a kid claimed was his drink bottle, a bottle of Jack Daniels filled with juice to look like alcohol. I teach intermediate middle school. A dildo. It was found in the school garden. The kid came up to me and said, "I found a ding-dong in the garden and I'm taking it home for mum." I was not professional that day. A note that said, "School makes me feel like a dog waiting to be euthanized." Honestly, the things the youth of today come up with. Reddit, who are the worst co-workers that you've ever had to work with? Working as a cashier for a grocery store. Awesomely friendly boss was always quick with a joke and great with customers. She also counted the drawers and handled the front of the store. My drawer came up $20 short one day. Never happened in the year that I was working, and I got pushed in front of the store manager without any defense. I could pay it out of pocket or get wrote up. Couldn't afford the $20, so I took the write-up. Broke high school kid that had to pay car insurance. Boss goes on later and starts talking about watching out for quick change artists. Yeah, that must have been it. Fast forward 3 months, I quit because of a dumb raise, because of a demerit, and go work elsewhere. A few months later, she's arrested and fired for stealing from the tills to feed her lottery habit. That happened to me. My drawer came up $10 short. My drawer had never been short before, ever. This manager that I'm pretty sure hated me told me I had to either call my parents to bring me the money or I would be suspended. Our drawers start at $100 in change and small bills. So whenever a drawer is used, the manager takes out all the money except $100 for the next cashier to use it. She let me count the $100 myself, but wouldn't let me count the money she took out because only managers have the right to do that. Another manager happened to come in early and counted the money again for me, just in case. Nothing was missing. The first manager told me that I was lucky my money turned up. Other people I worked with started mentioning that they had come up short after working with her too. She quit not long after that. When I was 16, I worked at Wendy's. One day I went in to find out that I was training. I'm working back window, and as I'm training her, she starts filling me in on her situation. She was a recovering crack addict who had just been released from jail for theft and was living in a halfway house. She was also 40 years old and kept hitting on me, asking if I had ever had a woman, telling me constantly how cute I was, etc. I thought I'd have to get a new job, but 2 days later, addiction won out and she ran out the door with $100. The funny thing was that, had it just been the money, she would have just been fired. Since she ran out with the work walkie-talkie, she was charged with a felony. Those things are stupidly pricey. She just couldn't understand the four-corner press method. I was a swing manager at McDonald's in high school. We had one employee, Johnny, who just didn't want to do any work. He was in the kitchen, so his duties were to cook, prep, clean, and restock. His favorite thing to do was prep. Ask the man to make a Big Mac and you'd get the worst sandwich ever. Ask him to slice tomatoes and you'd get perfection. Anyways, one day we're really busy and I'm helping out in the basement with an inventory order. Johnny comes downstairs and his hand is sliced, bad, down to the bone, bleeding everywhere. It looked like he had put his hand in the tomato slices and just smashed it onto his hand. Thing is, he was so calm, looked pleased with himself. We sent him home thinking that was that. He strolled out, said goodbye to his co-workers, and we never saw or heard from him again. That night I'm sorting out all the tills to take the dailies to the safe drop at the bank. We're missing nearly $5,000 in cash from the manager's safe. Never happened before, never happened again. Don't know how he did it. Step 1. Wait for distraction to arise. Step 2. Literally? Step 3. $5,000. The type who complain about not getting enough hours a week after week, but when you do schedule them the extra hours, they call out. In fairness, one of my old jobs went about this the wrong way. We'd ask for extra hours, sure, but then they'd say 20 minutes before you leave, "Want to work an extra 4 hours today?" No, I didn't. I've made plans around my work schedule now. "You always say you want more hours, but then you turn them down when I offer them." Whoa, wait. I signed up for every bank holiday, worked 28 days of December, and accept all overtime with advance notice. You can't just ask me to delay my plans by 4 hours when I'm supposed to set off and meet friends or family in the next half hour. This is unfortunately all too common in the food service industry. The manager does a bad job at scheduling hours and/or runs the place on the minimum possible number of employees all the time. And of course, disaster strikes if even one person calls in sick or even shows up late. I share office space with a woman who's been working in our firm for 35 years now. Underneath her desk, she has a banker's box half filled, at least 10 kilos, with colorful rocks. Now, one day I asked her about the rocks. "Oh, every time somebody really pisses me off, they get a rock in my box, so I can remember it." "You mean all of those rocks represent somebody?" She rummaged in the box for a second and pulled one out. "This is for the time the department secretary didn't invite me to her Christmas party, even though I gave her a present." I picked one out at random. "So, who's this for?" "That's for old boss retired circa 2003, that B. I told her not to hire that packy for accounting and she got pregnant 6 months later. She should have listened to me." I stared. "So, do I have any rocks?" She just glowered at me for a second and turned back to her newspaper. Maybe it's a therapy tool. Like, when she was a young child, she went psycho and killed her entire family because they bought a cat instead of a dog. But since she was a kid, they just put her into a psych ward until she was cured, and her therapist taught her to channel her anger by assigning it to colorful rocks. So now, instead of flying into a murderous rage, she just gets a new rock. I once had a co-worker who wouldn't do a thing if the boss was not in the store. If he wasn't there, she would be on the store phone talking to her baby daddy, outside smoking, or out in the mall shopping. She would do enough work to cover a 15-minute break, if you complained long enough for one. However, if the boss was there, she was all over the customers like they were her new best friend, and all in the boss's face saying, "Look at how well I work." I complained, naturally. He just said there was nothing he could do because he never witnessed any of this behavior. Well, one day, while she was pulling her BS, another co-worker and I were hit hard with a really huge rush. She was supposed to be helping with handing out orders, making fries and drinks and whatnot. Instead, she was off on the phone talking about sex loudly in earshot of the customers. I had a mental breakdown and just started crying. I turned around and yelled at her, something along the lines of, No one cares about your stupid sex life. Not me, not the co-worker, and not the customers. Either get up here and do your job or just leave now. She came up to help, but with the worst attitude ever. As soon as the rush died down, I booked it to the back, grabbed the cordless phone and called the boss in tears. I thought I was going to get fired for yelling in front of customers. He agreed to do a stakeout and watched her from afar. She was fired. I was given a raise. I quit 2 months later. You waited way too much. I would insist with the boss to check her work behavior from a distance or using a trusted third party. One lazy employee means another overworked one, and overall a completely crappy team spirit. I know, but it was my first job. I was 17. I had no idea what to do or how to stick up for myself. My current co-worker, we'll call her Jenny. Jenny is 30 or 31. I've never worked with a more incompetent person in any job ever. We're both pharmacy technicians, and I honestly believe that if she keeps working in this job, she's going to kill someone. Over the past few months, I've had to deal with some of the most incredibly stupid questions that could ever come out of a person's mouth, especially since she went to one of the local trade schools to prepare her for this career. Is a tablet the same as a milligram? What's that cancer that makes your hair fall out? Is crystal meth kept in the safe? What medicine is it that makes you want to eat people? So, you do marijuana with a needle, right? Wait, ludicrous is a real word? Not just a rapper? I didn't think I'd be thirsty because it's raining out, but I'm thirsty. Can I go buy a soda? Can men get bipolar? What's menopause? Recently, Jenny had a conversation with a pharmacist who was filling in at our store for a few days last week. The pharmacist was talking to her about school, after hearing that she's going to one of the big technical colleges in the area, and asked what she was studying there. Jenny: I'm studying engineering. Pharmacist: Oh, that's cool. Jenny: Yeah, I don't even know what that means, but I'm hoping to get a job making those board things that go in computers. I'm hoping she quits soon. She hates the job because people be telling me what to do, like, Jenny do this, Jenny do that. And just recently told the pharmacist that when it comes to doing the basic tasks like helping to put our weekly order away or using the register, she doesn't care if it's part of her job description. She doesn't want to do it. Front desk. This co-worker was fired recently. She was an old Jamaican lady who was our night audit, and after a year and a half of experiencing her habits, I completely reformed my schedule to morning shift just so I didn't have to be in contact with her like I did for the night. Night audit comes in at 11 p.m. to relieve the night shift. My co-worker would come in 5 minutes late, on the dot. Due to an idiotic corporate policy that allows this 5-minute courtesy, Hilton Hotel run by management company, franchised, there was nothing the managers could do. So I and my partner are waiting with our drawers counted and drops ready for deposit as she lumbers down from the clock room. By the time she's counted her drawer and fully ready to relieve us, it's already 11:15 p.m. And it's not like we're sitting there twiddling our thumbs either, because during her leisurely preparation we're taking in money, checking in guests, and constantly recounting the drawers just so we can minimize our delay in ending our shift. Otherwise, we either leave at 11:15 p.m. with everything in disorder, not in my character, or leave at 11:40 or 11:45 p.m. She was an awful front desk agent, mumbled to the guests, was barely personable, but she survived slipping under the radar because she always met the minimum of expectations. She was fired on a technicality, made a reservation at this hotel for her family without authorization, and I'm glad she's gone. There are so many workers in this city that deserved her spot that she wastefully occupied for 7 years. I wouldn't be surprised if the managers have been trying to get rid of her for ages, but the moment they found something, jumped at the chance. If you had booked your family into the hotel without authorization, would you have gotten fired? This management company has a policy where we cannot make a reservation under our name, employee rate, for a hotel within 50 miles of our hotel of employment. What happened to your best friend after high school? We were roommates in college. I got married and moved out. He married my ex-girlfriend and was the regional manager of an oil field, but overdosed on heroin, which no one even knew he was screwing around with. When I met him, he was 12, living in a home for boys. I was 13. Through high school, I had many adventures, shared experiences, both legal and not so legal, shared various intoxicants, shared women, shared many hours just talking about everything. I met a lovely, sweet girl and married her. He was a dog and jumped woman to woman, but constantly came to hang out with us, with a different girl most times. He married a woman 14 years older than him, lasted 2 years, divorced, worked in Saudi Arabia for 7 years, traveled around the world many times, married a girl 14 years younger than him, got divorced, wound up living at my house for the better part of 10 years. He died 2 years ago in his sleep, just days short of his 60th birthday. We had been brothers at heart for 48 years. Broke my heart. He's still pretty much the same guy. Only difference is he teaches at a school now instead of studying at one. We ended up living about 10 minutes away from each other in a large city. We're from a small town. We kept in touch infrequently. We'd changed a lot in the 15 years I lived out of state. Most recently, she posted a huge rant on Facebook about how working in HR is awful because she had to deal with all these stupid people who didn't even graduate college. And if you were stupid enough to have not graduated college, not to bother speaking to her because she couldn't handle being around such ignorance. Guess who didn't finish college? I haven't spoken to her since. I feel no real loss. I've made much better friends after high school. Reminds me of an older sister's crazy rant about gas station clerks. I texted her, reminded her of a mutual childhood friend of ours that worked at 7-Eleven. She was absolutely mortified, immediately deleted her post. There was a time when I was often called siblings on their FB posts. I stopped a year ago after a spoiled young sister went super psycho and blocked me. And for the most part, everyone else will see their goof and delete it. He joined the Air Force and I got married. I never see him anymore. Mine did the exact same thing, except his girlfriend went crazy and broke up with him. I had a few. One won a ton of scholarships, got a PhD in robotics from a prestigious university, married, had a few kids, works for a major tech firm doing major tech stuff. We talk a few times a year. Another became a lawyer, dealing with some subcategory of real estate. Occasionally writes for law journals, which I know from LinkedIn. I try calling about once a year, but the only time we spoke in the last 6 was at his wedding. Why only once a year? I used to try more often, was in denial over the fact that he's not much of a people person and never really makes an effort to stay in touch. Now it's more of a ritual than anything else. I don't think he thinks of me as a particularly close friend anymore. Roomed with me freshman year of college. First semester, all he would do is stay in the room and play video games or smoke weed. He'd never go to class. We ended up hating each other. He dropped out after the first semester. A couple years later, he stopped smoking and turned his life around. He didn't go back to college, but didn't need to because he found a job that makes him happy. We're still in contact, even though I moved away for a job. Sounds like my roommate. Doesn't leave the room and just plays video games all day. Dropping out. Hate him. We lost touch right away. I think we both knew we weren't really compatible. We just didn't have anyone else in high school, and we had known each other for years. She contacted me after freshman year in college over the summer, saying she wanted to get together. She ditched me. Then shortly after I got engaged, she contacted me again. I gave her a chance because college kids can still be dumb and immature. She dropped hints about wanting to be invited, despite us not seeing or speaking in 5+ years. Kept saying she would let me know when she was in town and we can get together. I said, yeah, definitely. Saw her mom at the store the next week. Her mom said she was coming up that weekend. I didn't reach out to her. I wanted to see if she was going to keep her word. Nope, and never contacted me again. Don't know what she's doing now. That was about 3 years ago. She's only talk. I'm sure if your paths crossed again at some point, she would do exactly the same thing. I have an aunt and uncle that talk big but never follow through. Best if you take your word at face value. Nothing. She was killed by a drunk driver a month before her 21st birthday. We had kind of lost touch after graduation, but we were starting to hang out again, and I couldn't have been happier about reconnecting. I'd missed her. Then one night a drunk driver hit her, going 80. I remember her sister calling me and having to tell me the next day. I was devastated. I'd let things slip between us when we went to separate colleges. I wish I had had more time with her, but I'm glad I had the few moments we did have when we were reconnecting. Please, don't drink and drive. There are so many options for you out there to get you home safely. Use one of them. My condolences. Quite a handful of people from my high school graduating class in 2010 have died due to hardcore partying, drunk driving, car accidents, and drug overdoses in the past 2 years. I was never that close with them, but it really makes me sad, and I can only imagine the pain their families are going through. He's still my best friend. Mine lives one street over, and our kids were born 2 days apart. It's great. Joined the army, goofing around with some buddies on leave. Got drunk and fell out of the back of a pickup truck bed, putting him into a coma. His parents disconnected life support a couple of weeks later and donated his organs to save 3 or 4 different people's lives. My best friend also died, but one day before our senior year of high school in a car accident because the driver was texting. She was going to be a midwife. He became someone pretty well known in the ghost hunting community, but not in a good way. I don't want to say his name, but he was a notorious liar when I knew him. And when I saw him on the show he was on, he was exactly the same as I remember. I was able to tell when he was lying every time, partly because I know his tells, but mostly because everything he said was a lie. Why did I instantly think of Zach Baggins? Don't worry, we all thought of Zach Baggins. I think the high school promoted him to head janitor, and he retired 5 years later. My 3 best friends and I all worked on the newspaper within high school. None of them work for newspapers, but they've all found success in their own careers. One of them is now a high school English teacher, who I've heard is quite popular with his students. Another one just graduated from med school, and the third, who was probably my best friend in all of high school, now lives in California and works for Google. Okay, but how are you doing, man? I'm successful as well. I work as a newspaper reporter and absolutely love it. She accused me of telling people she was a lesbian and stopped talking to me. It was untrue, as I did not tell anyone anything, me being oblivious to her orientation. She recently had a ceremony with a woman and posted pics on Facebook. A decent number of my high school friends later came out. I honestly had no idea. I did meet them all in musical theatre or drama, but still. My mom says she knew all along. I'm still annoyed for being accused of something I 100% didn't do. In a pretty similar situation right now in our friend group. My best friend apparently got seen by friend number 1 at a party, fooling around with a guy. He's supposed to be straight. Friend number 1 tells it to friend number 2, expecting him not to snitch. Friend number 2 snitches to best friend. Best friend confronts friend number 1 about spreading rumors, denies it ever happened. Friend number 1 calls best friend a hypocrite because he previously gave friend number 1 crap for not being honest with himself. Friend number 1 came out as bi a year earlier, but we all had our suspicions for a while. The talk goes south. Friend number 1 cuts ties with both best friend and friend number 2. Friend number 1 tells the story to friend number 3, expecting him not to snitch. Friend number 3 snitches to me. I proceed to snitch to Reddit. We lost touch for like 15 years. Then he showed up on Facebook. He lost a bunch of weight, moved across the country, got married, and has twins. Seems to be doing pretty well for himself. We haven't really reconnected in any meaningful way though. Good to see that he's got a good life though. One died of a heart attack, the other was shot and killed. The other finished the army, got married to a lunatic, and moved to the desert where he has taken up the hobbies of stargazing, painting, and yoga. Grew his hair out and has a ponytail. He drank himself to death by 30. I miss Paul. My best friend is in the process of doing this, unless he's already managed it. No one has heard from him in 2 years. I miss him too. Anyway, I'm sorry you lost your friend. All my best friends are still my best friends. And when we all went off to different universities, we found more good friends. And now those good friends are friends with everyone's best friends. So it's like some mega good friend group thing we've got going on. 15 of us are going to Vegas in June. Wish us luck, because we don't plan on coming back. This sounds to me like one of those pleasant dreams that you have until you're rudely awakened and reminded of the depressing reality. I've never had a group of friends in my life. I've been a peripheral accessory to several groups of friends, but none of those groups know each other. On only 2 occasions have I ever attempted to host some sort of event where I chose everyone who got to attend. They were disasters of awkwardness, as a bunch of incompatible people who didn't know each other sat around and tried to make small talk. After the last, I swore I would never attempt such stupidity again. He was diagnosed with colon cancer at age 45, years before they recommend you be tested for that, and died. Familial adenomatous polyposis maybe. It's genetic and you're at high risk of colon cancer ways before people without the defective gene would be, like 90% chance by age 45. I never got those kind of details from him. Would just meet him for a beer and listen to him joke about how the beers were flowing right into his colostomy bag. Was laughing right to the end. He grows pot, legally. He's really good at it. Has been my best friend for the past 10 years. 20 years of friendship and counting. I was his best man and soon he will be mine. His wife and my girlfriend are good friends too. We'll be taking a 15-day trip abroad in July.
Your job is to freak out a Walmart cashier by only buying 3 items. What do you buy? Go up with a pack of condoms and pretend you can't afford them. Go to put them back and return to the same cashier with plastic wrap and scotch tape. I was not expecting that. To be fair, I wasn't expecting to expect anything, so it doesn't count. May have quoted it wrong. Donuts, donut holes, and glue. I spoke in the car about the hole at the center of this donut. And yes, what you and Harlan did that fateful night seems at first glance to fit that hole perfectly. A donut hole in the donut's hole. But we must look a little closer. And when we do, we see that the donut hole has a hole in its center. It is not a donut hole at all, but a smaller donut with its own hole. And our donut is not a hole at all. A pack of Pampers, some baby milk, and a bottle of vodka. Then discover I don't have enough money, so put the milk and Pampers back, just by the body. Worked at a 7-Eleven and watched someone put back milk and diapers when they couldn't afford them alongside their scratch tickets. I was floored. Wow, that is pretty low. They were probably thinking, I can get 2 milks and diapers when I win on my scratches. But they'd have just bought another load of scratches if they won. But I was on a roll! Snap a picture of the cashier as you walk in. Go back to the photo lab and print it out. Go get a picture frame off the shelf and put the photo in the frame, then come up to the register with duct tape and a bottle of bleach. Kiss the picture after you walk away for added creepiness, whilst maintaining eye contact with the cashier. A bathtub plug, a toaster, and an extension cord. B-movie in VCD. B-movie in DVD. B-movie in Blu-ray. Mention that movie one more time and you might summon a demon. Or a B-man. One time, I bought a pineapple, condoms, and a flare gun. So that probably. Can I ask why? Unrelated purchases. Shotgun, ammo, and I'm sorry for your loss card. Ammo, condoms, sorry for your loss. We used to play this game in college. Biggest yikes we ever got was a coloring book, children's nighttime cough syrup, and a pack of condoms. To me, this reads as, my kid is sick, but my partner and I still have plans tonight. 3 peas, placed ever so gently, 3 inches apart, on the conveyor belt. Be sure to scream, they're no longer aligned when the cashier starts up the belt. Cucumber, extra large condoms, Barry White CD. Pregnancy test, coat hangers, and trash bags. Make sure to get wire hangers. Those plastic ones don't work nearly as well. Duct tape, a large area rug, and an axe. I substituted a shovel for the axe. Funnel, lube, and a can of refried beans. Biggest cucumber I can find, lube, and a birthday card. Then ask if the cucumber doesn't work, can you return it? Pull-up bar, stepping stool, and some thick rope. When you do this, say, "It's exactly what it looks like, and I blame you." Pineapple, KY lubricant, first aid kit. Fertilizer, matches, and a gasoline tank. Gasoline doesn't work. It has to be fuel oil. So my 3 items worked. You sound freaked out because I'm buying the wrong fuel. I was a cashier at a popular pharmacy chain. One of my very first customers bought a kids video, a dog bone, and some condoms. I was thinking, this is either fun for their whole family or this guy is into some really kinky stuff. Girlfriend had a kid and a dog. He wanted to distract them both and get laid. Good planning. Rubber chicken, toilet plunger, and bucket of Crisco. I have questions. This is a proven formula, actually. Few friends and I have done this before, and the look we got were worth it. LMAO. So I was working on special effects on a movie when we realized we needed KY jelly. It helps make the monsters look shiny when you film them. So I was on my way to buy the entire stock of lube when the production office told me to buy the entire stock of black pens from the store. So I get to the register with a cart filled with lube and ballpoint pens, get a look from the cashier, and tell her I'm going for the world record. The rest of that transaction was done in silence. That was great. Well, did you get the world record or not? I have tips if you're still trying to get there. So it turns out that a representative from Guinness needs to witness, otherwise it doesn't count. Lessons were learned that day. But now I have built up self-confidence, and I believe in myself. That's better than any world record. Personal lubricant, duct tape, zip ties. Sub out zip ties for teddy bear and it gets just that much more messed up. True story, friend's co-worker was on his way to visit his girlfriend who had a dog. He stops at party store and buys whiskey, condoms, and dog treats. 3 picture frames with the stock photos replaced by candid photos of the cashier. 3 people with barcode tattoos. I scan them as they stand silently despondent. I pay, they follow on leashes. Make sure they are real barcodes. Arizona iced tea, 99 cents. Clorox, $4.99. Sir, I'll need to see an ID for this last one. I can only hope the cashier freaks out when you buy 3 Google Play cards with $500 each while you're talking on the phone. For context, scammers try to trick people into buying high-value gift cards. Not sure if all Walmarts do this, but the one I worked at in high school made us tell people that were putting more than $100 on any number of cards had to go to customer service to get it done. Customer service would then ask what the cards were for. A hamster, condoms, and a tank of helium. More puzzling than disturbing. Go to Walmart with a young child, buy a back-to-school backpack with their favorite cartoon characters on it, a large hunting knife, and a collapsible gun. Do Walmart sell guns? I'm assuming they do. That fits inside the backpack. Come up to the counter with everything in the backpack and make some comment about back-to-school season being a real killer. Then pull out your items for the cashier to scan. Make sure the kid is really quiet, too. Put makeup on them as well to make it look like they're physically abused and sleep-deprived. Nothing will freak out a cashier. We don't care about your purchases. Previously, a retail worker. I don't know, I got a pretty sad look from the cashier the time I needed whiskey, a box of Kleenex, and a single can of cat food on Christmas Eve. Didn't even realize how pitiful a picture my purchases drew until I saw her face. Sledgehammer, baby oil, pack of cigarettes. Actual purchase and the face did not disappoint. A bottle of painkillers, an X-Acto knife, and a book on how to perform a circumcision. Nair, cat food, and litter box. Paint drop cloth, butternut squash, KY lubricant. Null pointer exception leads to unknown Kentucky lubricant. Kentucky Fried Lube, it's the Colonel's special. A rope, duct tape, and a huge suitcase. Vicine, superglue, and the book The Subtle Art of Not Giving a. Animal harness, paint, condoms. Vaseline, a box of Kleenex, and an Archie comic. Rope, teach bags, and a bag of candy. For a school project, I bought pipe end caps, screws, and a propane tank once. Walmart employees are dead inside. Nothing freaks them out. A dead betta fish, fish fry mix, and cooking oil. Where are you planning on buying a dead betta fish? At Walmart. Condoms, needles, pregnancy tests. I open the toilet paper and remove 3 individual sheets and ask for a discount because I know it won't be a messy one and don't need the whole roll. 2 large bottles of vodka and a How to Drive for Dummies book. Hedge trimmers, bleach, garbage bags. Cucumber, handcuffs, and a thank you card. The biggest cucumber I can find, a pack of condoms, and the Shrek film. Which one? Probably the one with all of them in it. A spoon, cereal, and bottled water. I tell the cashier that this particular bottled water is best with cereal. Similarly, DiGiorno, Red Baron, and a pineapple. Make a pizza sandwich. Pregnancy tester, birth control pill, and sulfur acid. Ah yes, just got some sulfuric acid from my Walmart. I'm aware you can get it as drain cleaner and batteries, but it's probably not a thing the cashier first thinks. Black grocery bag, caustic soda, stain remover. Cake mix, a machete, and weigh the toddler that you found as cauliflower. Duct tape, blonde wig, and a glass eye. They don't sell glass eyes at my Walmart. That's the point. It'll freak them out even more. Donuts, Astroglide, and anything random for the third one. My buddy and I saw a dude buying that, and we didn't say anything in line, but I was silently wondering, is he going to... the donuts, glaze them, or both? As soon as we walked out the door, my buddy asked the same question aloud. 3 items that Walmart doesn't sell. My mom and I tried to buy an ice cream maker from Target, but it wouldn't ring up at the register. Turned out, someone had bought it at Kmart and returned it to Target. I guess what I'm saying is, I've done this, and it caused quite the disruption to a few employees' workflows. I only need 2. Condoms and a Happy Mother's Day card. Oh, come on, get her some flowers too, you cheapskate. Lobster, large quadcopter, duct tape. A dildo, handcuffs, and hot sauce. What Walmart are you going to that sells dildos? They're usually sold as personal massagers that just happen to be in the family planning section. A fursuit, a large dog cage, and a gallon of lube. Your Walmart sells fursuits? They might mean those Maskimo things. They're $20 fursuit heads that look like $20 fursuit heads. They're kind of scary on their own. What are you exceptionally good at, but hate doing? Part 1. Data entry. I can type very fast and very accurately, but it's the most mindless task with 0 creativity. Data entry is a gateway to the creative world of data analysis, full of such rich creative choices as, should I use a stacked bar chart or a stacked percentage chart? Do I want to show this data by day or clustered by week? And what shade of gray is best for this data? That unironically sounds like something I'd enjoy. I actually like organizing things. Why yes, I am extremely boring. How could you tell? Cleaning. Until you're 15 minutes in and realize everything's dirty, and you have to clean it now because you know you're not going to clean anything tomorrow. Lawn work? I can do it all. Struggle to do a basic mow and trim on my own yard on time. Organization. At work, everything is pristine. Any video game I play becomes disgustingly structured. The idea of organizing my bedroom makes me want to lie on the floor and cry. Much the same. At work, I clean as I go. Organized, tidy, tools cleaned and sorted, and I know where everything is. Every bolt, drill bit, spanner, item of test equipment, oil can, widget, useful piece of scrap material. If anyone wants to know where anything is, they ask me. At home? Screw it. I'll vacuum tomorrow. No clean mugs? That one's not so bad. I'll just rinse it out. One end of the kitchen counter is for mail. The other day, I found an unopened letter from 2016 with a £50 discount voucher in it that would actually have been useful to me at the time. I am very good at handling children, which is ironic because I don't particularly like kids. Same. Kids enjoy my company, but I really, really do not enjoy theirs. Being on time. I only hate it because nobody I know does it. I'm always early, and I hate it, but I'm only early because I'm always paranoid I'm going to be late, so I leave really early. Public speaking. I am an introvert, and I do safety training for my company. Comprehension has gone up drastically, and I've done quite a few talks on how to use science to make safety fun in my industry. But after, I have to shut myself in a hole for at least 3 hours to get myself back to center, because it is so exhausting to me. I have to sort of be a different person, and doing that is mentally draining. Yeah, it's weird. I'm one of those people who has trouble holding a normal conversation with somebody, apart from people that I know, of course. But if I'm giving a public speech or a presentation, suddenly, everyone pays attention to me and seems to respect my insight a lot. I've made some friends and contacts solely because they've witnessed me giving a speech and been impressed by the performance. I just get more confident and talk with a, I know what I'm talking about voice, when I can actually talk about a specific topic with some authority. Then someone random comes up to me and asks, so tell me about yourself, and I'm suddenly totally clueless in what they're after. So after presentations, I always have this, what just happened moment, even though I've done a lot of them. I'm a teacher and love teaching most of the time, but I'm generally quiet outside of class. On a busy day, I might be talking 5 hours straight, which is just exhausting. When I come home, my wife sometimes gets mad at me because I have nothing to say, but I feel like I've literally used up more than my capacity of spoken words for the day. Being nice to customers. The amount of times I confuse my lines. A customer walks in and I walk up to them, smile, and politely ask, "Would you like a bag with that?" Completely confusion. Sorry, I meant to use my other line. Hi, how are you today? Fixing computers. Please come to me if you need computer fix. We'll fix for cheap. Please. I feel this so hard. I used to love it and got good at it, so I got asked for help constantly. And it's not so much that I mind helping or even that I'm doing it for free, but it was my job and I'm very keen on that whole work-life separation thing. So the one thing I wanted to stop thinking about after I got home was the one thing I got bugged about the most. It seems selfish in retrospect, but I do not want to listen to you yammer on about your screwed up computer for 2 hours after having done it for 8 hours already. Listening to people's problems. Math. I don't know why I'm this good at it, but I hate it so much that's crazy. So you're good at math. Let me test. 2 plus 2. 36. Final answer. My answer was much lower. You must be really good at math. Everything I have ever become exceptionally good at. As soon as I become proficient at something, the fun stops and it just becomes work. I pretty much only enjoy learning, but I don't get much enjoyment out of performing what I have already learned. For example, I had an amazingly fun time learning how to weld for over 10 years. There's a lot to learn in welding, and you can make major improvements for many years. You can even go your whole career learning new things about welding. But eventually you reach a point where you have become proficient, and you're only doing minor adjustments to perfect your craft. For me, the joy is gone at that point, and with that goes my passion for it as well. Maybe start teaching. There can be a lot of joy and satisfaction in seeing others become good at things you are teaching them. I worked with a welding supervisor who basically was tasked of getting the skills up. He was very passionate talking about other people's welds and craftsmanship. Apparently, my job. My superiors and coworkers often comment how good I am. In the back of my head, I am thinking, wow, imagine how good I would be if I was actually doing something I care about and was passionate about. I'm actually kind of lazy and don't really do as much as I could do. However, they seem to like what I'm doing, so I do enough to maintain that facade and get compensated fairly well for it. I have thought about quitting a few times, but I've sort of settled in because it's hard to find something else out there, and if I can get away with being lazy but somehow being thought of as good at my job, might as well milk it while I can. This is me. I don't hate my job, I just hate working. I've been working from home for the past 3 weeks, you guys know why, and my superiors commend me every chance they get about how professional I am, and how hard I'm working these past weeks, how I'm closing the same number of incidents in less time and with user reviews. I'm playing Animal Crossing most of the time and rewatching Avatar, now Korra as I've already finished with Anne. Me too. I'm super efficient at my job because we receive daily goals. I do my job in 3 or 4 hours, slack the other 4 and pretend I just finished it like 20 minutes before my shift ends. Talking people down from suicide. It's my job. May I ask why you hate it? I've done it a lot. Several times a day sometimes. Just like some other comments are saying, I guess it just sucks it should even be a job. I hear so many stories about why they should die, and how there's nothing out there anymore, and how nobody cares. It's tough and draining sometimes, and it reminds me of how cruel the world can be. But at the same time, I'm glad I can have the ability to do this. Other people's jobs, because I work with a bunch of people that don't do their jobs. Hope you're a project manager, at least you're compensated for doing everyone's job. My technique for getting laggards to do their job is to have them give me a demo to show me their amazing skills or knowledge. At least this works well in IT. Drawing. Been drawing as long as I can remember, but now I just get stressed when I draw. Since grade school to now, everyone and their mother asks me to draw them something in return for absolutely nothing. Got to the point it's the only way I felt noticed in school or around my peers. It's very minuscule, I know, and I'm humbled to an extent that people could see my art and physically want it, but it makes me only draw for myself at the end of the day because of it. Even when I started to do it for money, people just want to skip out on the pay or cut you short, because it didn't take long enough to warrant that price. I just lost the passion and fun of drawing after years of dealing with very rude people who do not think artists deserve money for their time. Find myself enjoying it here and there when I'm bored or making something for myself or friends. Aside from that, I sadly don't think I could handle a career with it. I understand you on a spiritual level here. I started drawing when I was about 6 or 7, and everyone wanted me to draw the dumbest thing for no pay. I kept telling them no and drew for myself. Now people, especially family, keep telling me I should make drawing a career, like going to be an animator for Disney. But I only want to draw when I want to, not because I have to. It should be something I enjoy doing. Debugging. I can find the issue in another people's code faster than they can. I just hate doing it because it requires a lot of sticking stuff to the wall and seeing why it won't stick. Same here. But I guess that applies for most people with a decent coding skill though. You usually find other people's problems quicker than you find your own, as you look at things from a different perspective and distance. Cooking. I'm an amazing cook, but I absolutely hate cooking. Cooking, that hobby you don't want anyone finding out you do, because then they just ask you to do it for them. Helping old people with their phones. They absolutely never learn. Yeah, they do the thing you show them, but they know they can just call you to ask you how to do it, so they never bother putting in the effort to learn. It's a vicious cycle that hopefully our grandkids won't have to put up with. Yeah, this is me with my dad. I never want to help him with anything technological because he constantly throws a fit and never wants to learn it. I'm exceptionally good at waking up. I've never not woken up. It's a curse, really. Having to face every new day with a certainty that in all likelihood, my challenges and failures will carry over and over again. Sleep is my mistress, and a whore is she. Night after night, she holds me, coddles me, uses me. When sunlight comes knocking on my door, as it must, she jumps awake and sends me off into the world through the back door, silent, dreary, and blubbering curses to the wind. It is my back door, she is my guest, and yet every morning I find myself in my lonely nakedness, darting from cover to cover, searching for any sign of respite from the heat of day. Tonight, I will go back into the arms of my familiar. I will let her hold me, coddle me, use me, for one more chance that when sunlight comes knocking, she will keep holding me, coddling me, using me, forevermore. Bro, you ever consider being a poet? Bro, that doesn't pay the bills. I appreciate the kind words. I'll keep writing for you, though. Listening. I'm fairly introvert, so my need for speaking is pretty low, so other people can vent to me and praise me for being a good listener, but it usually bores me. This is me, I think. What bothers me is when people take 2 minutes to get one point across that they already did in the first few seconds. I feel like a large chunk of word conversations are just people repeating themselves, which can be useful when it comes to making sure everyone on the same page, to be fair. But so much of the time, I'm just sitting in my chair for several minutes, listening to people reiterate the same thing over and over. I try to say something to indicate I've understood what they're saying, but they just keep going. What are you exceptionally good at, but hate doing? Part 2. Cleaning or organizing for keepers, like pre-hoarders. My sister had this problem particularly bad, and every few years I totally redo her room and make it beautiful. Last time I did this, apparently, she literally fell on the ground and started crying. My mom thought she was upset at first, but it was just extreme relief and clarity, having all her things laid out nicely and easily accessible and visible without extra clutter. And I used rubber cement to stick black tissue paper against one of her walls. It's really easy to take down and does not damage, and honestly, it looked really, really cool. It made the room feel way bigger. But I'm a keeper and I cannot keep my office clean and organized. Please, tell me more about this keeper business. Is that your own term, or where did you learn it? I'm pretty sure I heard it somewhere. It's just when you have a hard time getting rid of things and they pile up really quickly, but in a problematic way. Almost hoarding. My big problem is I keep anything that reminds me of something that needs to be done. I'm afraid if I throw it out, I'll forget. It's a deeply flawed system because it builds up so quickly, and I can't tackle everything at once, so the majority of chores end up being delayed or not done anyway. For my sister, it's anything with sentimental value. She would keep even little broken figurines if they came from someone she cared about, even if they were fished out of the waste bin. Drawing and painting. I have always been a pretty good artist ever since I was a young kid. When I got to college, I realized I hated it and almost never do it anymore. I'm pretty good at acrylic painting, but it takes so much time and it's so boring. Another thing is washing the stuff you use for it and tidying up everything. Just annoying. Everybody wants me to continue painting, but I just completely lost my interest in it. Disappointing my parents. That's why I make sure my parents' expectations are so low that they can actually say they're proud of me sooner or later. It's not that low yet, but hopefully soon. Fun fact, one of my minor superpowers is that I'm only good at things I don't particularly enjoy doing. Maybe because if you dislike doing something, you'll put in effort to do it right the first time, so you don't have to repeat it? You could be right. I usually go into it with a, let's just get this over with kind of attitude. I'm not one for procrastination and despise having to do rework. I am good with animals and kids, but the weird looks made me hate children and animals started to annoy me like a year back. What do you mean by weird looks? I always used to play tag with my cousins who were 10 and younger when I was like 14, and my family is really judgmental. Being a nerdy, obedient kid for my parents. Asian here. So when you play choice video games, do you do the good guy by default, or can you do bad guy playthroughs? It is really hard to say, but I still tend to do the good guy, because in a long term I've gradually internalized some Eastern values, such as importance of academic achievement, dependence on family, etc., and it has become how I think about things now. So even if I got choices, I may still think according to the values and make the same choices. But seriously, every time I see how you Western guys having fun, partying crazily, sometimes it hurts me a little bit. Because I do wish I had a happier life with more freedom for myself, instead of just staying at home to obey my parents and work on these stupid math questions. Baking. It's the portioning that I run out of patience with. You use one measuring cup and you gotta wash the whole set because they're attached. Programming Crestron control systems. Sorry for the ignorance, but I don't know what Crestron is, and I'm curious. Could you explain? There are two major players in the audio-video control system world. They make the central processor, touch panel, and various audio-video distribution equipment, used in both home automation and corporate video conferencing. Each uses their own proprietary programming language. AMX uses what would be considered a traditional language, similar to JavaScript, C++, etc. You type out functions, variables, multi-dimensional arrays, and can perform mathematical operations. Crestron uses a graphical wizard interface, which has no analog I can think of. At the end of the day, both AMX and Crestron do the same thing: send on and off commands to TVs, make audio calls, adjust the room temperature. For small-scale systems with basic features, I can write code equally fast and with identical results in both. As the size or complexity scales, or worse, the client changes the requirements in the 11th hour, the two languages are anything but equal. A basic 8-person video conference room, or a standard home theater, I can program in either in about the same amount of time. Doing a large-scale multi-room conference center or a whole home automation, the time and stress levels are very different. Taking charge or being in control, both at work and at home. I am confident, calm, and can usually handle anything. However, everyone always turns to you because of it, and it would be nice if I didn't have to all the time. Same, I always take on the leadership role for projects, but somehow my enthusiasm for said project translates to, I'll do all the work while everyone sits back and takes credit. Treating sick and injured cats because I get too emotionally attached to the cases. Talking to people and strangers. I come off as outgoing, confident, and friendly, and I get along with people. But I have social anxiety and I'm screaming in agony internally the entire time. Kind of contradictory. I feel the same. It's like being an introverted extrovert. Staying alive. I'm on the opposite side. Love doing it, very bad at it. Washing dishes. I was going to say, that's not that hard, and then remembered how some people's washed dishes look. This'll get buried, but I have a 1 in a million singing voice for light opera and comic musicals. I'm a huge fan of classical and opera, especially late romantic and early modern, but I hate most musicals. But hey, if society collapses and you need someone to do Pirates of Penzance over the campfire for the kids, I guess I'll indulge. I love writing. In fact, I'm an avid writer. My friends read my stuff and tell me I need to stop calling it trash because that's the kind of writer I am. But when I'm told I need to write an essay about something I couldn't care about, nope, I hate writing. Managing people. I'm a software engineer that has been assigned to work with a number of adjacent coworkers on large projects. I always found myself thinking, if nobody is going to do it, I might as well. Working with devs is mostly awful, and I have declined the opportunity to become a lead and do it full-time. I'm sticking to the senior developer track. Apologies, but I'm pretty sure it's not good management to take over a job yourself if someone isn't doing it correctly. Most definitely. This is among the reasons why I'm not a manager. Everything. As the proverbial jack of all trades, my river of knowledge is extremely wide, though not very deep. So if there's something that seems just above the average person's pay grade, but not complicated enough to warrant paying a professional a lot of money to do, they call me. I build web pages as my job, but I'm apparently also a plumber, electrician, construction worker, accountant, clothing tailor, chef, car repairman, appliance repairman, AV guy, musician, photographer, videographer, graphic designer, and all-around troubleshooter for seemingly any problem. It can get a little exhausting being everything to everyone. I'm right there with you. I can do minor repairs, and I feel like I'm semi-smart on almost anything. But when asked why or how, most of the time I just crashed like a Windows 98 computer. Graphic design. I spent years doing it for fun, went to college for 2 years for a degree, and now I want nothing to do with it. Working for other people is a nightmare. Can relate as an ex-graphic designer. Commercial graphic design for clients can really take the joy out of the process. Love doing it in school though. Yep, I loved it in school, and now it feels soul-sucking a lot of the time. It's really hard to find satisfaction in your job when clients are paying, so they get the final say in everything. Making sandwiches very fast and neatly. I get complimented on it all the time and get called a sandwich artist. What a lot of people don't know is that I'm an actual artist, with an advanced art degree and everything. Teaching. Hate is a strong word. It's more like I'm qualified to do it, and I studied for it, and I even got licensed for it. The thought of actually doing it for a living is just not me. It's a job that, in my view, demands authenticity, and it's inauthentic for me. The education itself I don't regret, but it was unwise of my younger self to pursue it. I felt trapped, and it seemed a safe way out. It wasn't. What do you do for a living now? Well, right now I'm not doing much, because I'm out of work due to the crisis. I'm not comfortable specifying, but it's an essential job. Cooking. I cook quite well, at least that's what my friends tell me. However, I often cannot manage the time it takes to cook. I hate the time, but love the cooking part itself. I cook for myself. Screw everybody else. Why should they sample the heavenly dishes? Drawing. I used to love drawing when I was younger. Aced all my art classes all through school, but over the years, I've all but completely lost interest. People always told me I should pursue a career in art, but honestly, if I had to draw for a living, I'd hate doing it even more than I already do. It's frustrating that people act like if you have talent, you're obligated to do something with it. Being bad at stuff. Customer support? I was very good at it, but now I'm so happy I don't do that anymore. Once a year, I still come back to it if they have training or something to help out. It just reminds me how lucky I am not having to do that anymore. Writing. I'm constantly told I have a way with words, but I have no idea what people are talking about. At work, I'm tasked with sending out clarifying emails or asked when I'm going to publish an article. During college, I was once told to write a review article for another colleague just because I'm good at writing. An entire scientific review article on a topic I'd only been recently introduced to at that time. If I participate in any projects, guess who's automatically tasked with the write-up? I dislike writing. I think it takes me longer to write than most because I think I'm horrible at it. It makes me anxious, to be honest. It took me 20 minutes just to press send on this. I feel you. My workplace found out I write fast and well, better than anyone else, especially in English. Virtually all our usable documentation is by guess who. I have been writing as a hobby since I was 12. Increasingly, the stress isn't worth it. I get so worried my stuff is crap. All my writing is worthless. I've written so much and will never do anything sensible with it because, frankly, at this point I'm terrified it actually might be good and people may want me to write more. Screw that. I'm retesting our staging routine again and looking at cat pics. What is something your parents said to you that may have not been a big deal, but they will never know how much it affected you? Part 1. When my dad was on his deathbed with pancreatic cancer, he wasn't allowed to talk. He fought and fought with the nurses so that they would let him say one word to my brother and me. He took off his oxygen mask, looked at us both, and said, "Hey." It was hilarious. He was the best. He lay there dying and fought with the nurses to give my brother and I a laugh on a day when our world was falling apart. Happy Father's Day, Dad. My dad, when in the ICU a couple of years ago, spent about 5 straight minutes gasping for air just to tell me that he'd had an ultrasound and my mother needed to be informed he wasn't pregnant. I honestly thought he was going to say he wasn't going to make it. I love that Glaswegian. My dad passed away from cancer a few years ago. During his battle, I was his sole caretaker. At 19, I was taking care of him, making sure our bills were paid, getting groceries, cooking, cleaning, setting up appointments, and the million other tasks that come with being someone's caretaker. One day when I returned from running errands, My dad told me he forgot our electric bill was due that day. I casually told him that I'd already run a check over while I was out and about. I remember he stopped what he was doing and just turned to look at me and said, "You're going to be just fine when I'm gone." That was heartbreaking to think about, but comforting to know he saw my maturity and ability to handle everyday responsibilities. I hadn't felt I was ready to be on my own, but he helped me realize I would be just fine. 8 years later, and I'm doing okay on my own, but man, do I wish he was here. Happy Father Day, Dad. Great story. I have a similar story, little more unconventional. About 13 years ago, my dad also had cancer. I was 13 and he knew when his last day was, and the last thing and most impactful thing he ever said to me was, "I love you and I will come back to haunt you." It sounds weird to say, but that has been the most comforting thing he could have said. It feels so great to know I have so many angels and ghosts keeping track of me. Just so you know, you too have someone great watching over you too. When I was 12, nearly 13, my mom took me out on a dinner date to talk to me about puberty and how much we might hate each other over the next few years. As part of the evening, she said she had a gift for me. I was pretty super excited. She had teased that it was a very special and something I would cherish, so clearly, I thought it would be a Sega Genesis or maybe a pair of Reebok pumps. 33 years old, still never had a pair and quite pissed about it. Instead, she handed me the book, Love You Forever. You know, the children's book. On the inside, she had written, "To my darling Jake, love Mom. Always remember this." She died yesterday after a 12-year battle with early onset dementia. I'll be getting "Always Remember This" tattooed on my arm next week, traced from her handwriting. I've been reading a bunch of the comments in this post for the last hour or so, and yours was the first one to actually hit a heartstring and bring tears to my eyes. So here I am, a near 26-year-old man on the subway with tears in my eyes. She sounds like my mom, and I can't imagine what my life will be like when her time comes. I'm truly sorry to hear about your loss, man. I went to college about 5 hours away from where I grew up, and the first 2 years there, I didn't have a car. My dad, who commuted probably 2+ hours a day, I grew up in Northern Virginia, every workday for a lot of his working life, drove down 5 hours to come pick me up so that I could come home for some holiday usually. This is when we would have our talks. At the time, I was a college sophomore struggling with what direction I wanted to go in terms of major and career. I've always been pretty intellectually capable, but never had a career that just beckoned me or made me feel passionate. But I went to college anyway, since that's what you're supposed to do if you have the money and the capability. As an upper middle-class millennial, I now realize this is not an unusual feeling at all. I ended up majoring in history and anthropology. My dad is a baby boomer who grew up dirt poor and worked at a 7-Eleven to get himself through college and law school. I just remember coming at him with a question about what I should pursue, and he put it to me like this. Well, there's 2 ways. First, either you find something you love to do, or second, find something you love and work to support it. I took this in for a moment and asked which one he did. I do the second one. I asked what he was supporting, with a naivete only a 19-year-old can muster. He chuckled. You? That just flipped my perspective on everything, and made me feel a lot better about being sort of lost. I knew I'd figure it out, and that life would push me where I needed to go when I needed to go there. He's still around. I should tell him. Today would be the perfect day to tell him. I might not have given birth to you, but you are mine. You were mine from the day I met you. I loved you the second I saw you. Nobody can change that. This came from my stepmother a couple years ago. I met her when I was 13, and I'm almost 21 now. It meant a lot because she was the first strong, consistent mother figure I ever had. She knows that was a nice thing to say, but I don't think she knows quite how much it meant to me. I don't think she will ever know how much I love and respect her for who she is. Similar story from another point of view. My uncle has 2 children. Legally, his son is his, although he's not his bio dad. When he later remarried, his wife already had a daughter, and he decided he'd raise her as his own, especially since her father was out of the picture. For years, even though he was really happy with his family, he wanted to actually father a child of his own, but it never happened. He tried for years to find a way to adopt my cousin, but she has a father and it just never happened. My cousin, when she was in her teens, decided to change last names and take my uncle's, because he's the only father she's ever known, even though his name is not on her birth certificate. My uncle says this was worth 1,000 I love yous, because she also chose him to be her father. He compares it to a sort of marriage because they both said yes to each other. That day was the last day he regretted not having a child of his own. This is really insignificant, but made a big impact on my relationship with my mother. I was about 4, I have a surprising amount of memories from when I was little, and I was coloring on one of those art easels for kids, and my mom was cleaning the house. I asked her if I could draw on myself, and she surprisingly said yes. So of course I took my markers and just went to town, coloring my arms and stomach and legs. She came into the room to find me and flipped out that I had done this. I thought I was in big trouble, so I started crying and I said, "But you told me I could." To which she responded, "You're right, I did. I thought you meant on the paper though. That was my fault. Let's get you cleaned up." And I wasn't in trouble at all. That was the day I realized adults aren't just there to punish you, and that my mom was fair and understanding. To this day, that's one of my favorite qualities of my mom, and makes for a solid relationship. Parents actually owning up to their mistakes and saying sorry is really important for a child. When I was little and my mother was still alive, her and my father seemed to always be getting into fights. Even after she was diagnosed with cancer, gone through multiple surgeries, and fought back her estimated date of death 5 years, was essentially brain dead, and died, my father still harassed her. Besides calling her stupid and saying he hoped she would just die already, one memory of him really stuck with me. One time during the summer, we had a storm and the power went out. My mother had just begun to enter her final stage of life and was on an oxygen machine and bedridden. She was unable to move, hear, see, or smell, but if she was conscious, she could still feel us. My father turned on the generator but sent power to our basement, where he always smoked. Confused, we asked him why our mother's oxygen machine wasn't powered. "We have oxygen tanks, so I may as well enjoy myself." We had one oxygen tank, with hardly enough air for 2 hours. It was for emergencies such as moving her to a hospital, not wait for the power to come on, which, living in the country, would take days sometimes. But the line that makes me look in the mirror every day and do reality checks is before my mother was even diagnosed. I was 5, and at this point, I wasn't aware of all the fighting. I remember my mother walked into my room one day and sat down on the bed with me. She asked me what I was doing, and I was playing Pokemon Fire Red, the first video game she got me. She held my hand, said that she loved me. "Osmizer 20, please don't ever be like your father. Please respect women and love your children. Know that I may not always be around, but I will always love you and support you. Even if I think you're wrong, I'll help you. But please be different than your father." As she lost her speech, the last words she spoke was to me. I walked out of the kitchen through her room to say goodnight. It was 12 a.m. She grabbed my hand and lipped, "Sit down." I held her hand for what felt like an eternity when she finally managed to say the first thing in 3 days, and the last thing in her life. "I feel so bad for you. I'm so sorry I'm leaving. I love you, Mom. Your mother was an amazing person. I hope you took her advice." She truly was. As for her advice, I try to treat others as best I can, but trying to not be my father is becoming more difficult every day. Maybe it's just that I constantly remind myself to not be him. But no matter what, I am going to treat my kids far better than he did. I have a whole spiel of stuff he's done that has affected my siblings and I, but it has nothing to do with this thread. I'm a high-strung person, but when I was a child, my dad looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Be like the swan. They glide through the water and look calm and cool. But if you were to look below, you'd see their feet frantically kicking. Don't let them see you sweat, but work hard." I didn't think it made an impact, but people tell me often that I come off very organized and calm, while inside my inner monologue is a constant scream. Thanks, Dad. "Be good to each other" was the last thing my father said to my mother and I before he went into the surgery room, from which he would eventually die. I think he meant for my mother and I to be good to each other, but I try to remember this every day and apply it to every interaction I have with people. My father was the salt of the earth, a selfless man who was the perfect example of how to treat others, and I can only hope to lead my life based on his actions and words. That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing. It's so important to be kind with everyone around us, even those we don't know. You can be friendly to everyone, but you can't be friends with everyone. Yes! My mom always said to me, "Be friendly to everyone, but choose your friends wisely." Excellent advice. I say this to my students all the time. I have a good one. One of my first memories was the time I lied to my mom about something. She patiently explained why it was not good to lie, and something people should never do. Later that evening, the phone rang, and my big sister ran to answer. My mom was watching TV or something and called from the other room, "If that is, name I forgot, tell her I am at the store." The moment you discover your parents' hypocrisy can be devastating. What is something your parents said to you that may have not been a big deal, but they will never know how much it affected you? Part 2. I'm adopted. When I misbehaved as a child, my parents would tell me that they were going to return me and get a refund. That's funny. My mom fled El Salvador because of the political turmoil. Whenever I was bad, she told me she would send me to El Salvador to work in the coffee bean farm with my cousins. Your life is like a bus. People will get on, people will get off. Some people will stay on forever. Other people will be there for a short time and then leave. And sometimes you just need to kick someone off your bus. On the subject of jobs, just remember, you don't have to be a farmer to be outstanding in your field. Guess which parent it was? One of my professors liked to say, if you want to be outstanding in your field, you have to spend time out standing in a field. When I was small, my mom and I would read together every night before bed. One night when I was maybe 5, we read a new book, I'll Love You Forever. It's written from the mom's point of view as her kid grows up and does exasperating things. Ruins her favorite watch, stays out late with friends, etc. Each time, the mom says, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The last page is written from the adult son's point of view, as he gently takes care of his senior mother. And he says the same thing his mom always said, but says mommy instead of baby. My mom cried reading it to me, and I didn't understand why until I got older and realized she was imagining all the stages of life she would go through with me and my brothers. I'm an adult now, and thinking of it still makes me teary-eyed. I've never gotten through that book without bawling. Ever. Same. It always made my daughter hug me and say, "Don't be sad, Mommy." It was hard to explain to a small child that I wasn't crying out of sadness. Stopped reading that book. Instead would read her favorite, Skippy John Jones. My mother-in-law and I were having a normal conversation, and she said this casually. My son never used to smile in pictures, and now he does. You make my son smile. And then she moved on to the next thing. I think it was the highest compliment she could ever give me. When I was pretty young, my mom once told me, never feel embarrassed about asking for a ride home, in regard to not being sober enough to drive. Years later, I'm leaving a friend's house and I make it about 1 block before I can literally hear my mom's voice in my head as I'm driving, and thinking to myself, man, I don't want to call my boyfriend to come get me after I told him I wouldn't need a ride. Immediately pulled over and called him. 10 out of 10 would do it again. I remember doing this once too, but because of my brother's advice. He sent me a card with cab money my first week at college, asking me to never drink and drive, and that he'd refill that money anytime I needed more. One night we went out and my car was at my friend's house, got dropped off and drove around the cul-de-sac, and realized I had no business driving, especially 20 minutes across town. So I stopped and turned the car off and got in the back seat and slept there till the morning. I realized I probably still could have received a DUI. Isn't there laws about sleeping in a car drunk and still getting one? But it was easily the best decision I could make at the time. I'm convinced that night would have turned out much worse if I would have tried to drive home. My mother died of cancer when I was about 12. She had fought for a long time and finally reached the point where we had come to terms that she was going to die. She was supposed to go into hospice care, so I didn't know that when I visited her in the hospital, it would be the last time I would talk to her. The last thing she said to me was when I was getting a haircut. I spent the night at a close family friend's house that night. My friend's father woke me up late at night and told me my mom had passed. He and my father were both there when she passed. He said she had him promise that he would look after me and my father. Her final words were, "Tell my father and me, I will always love them." It really impacted me. My mother was in pain, dying of cancer, and she spent her last moments worried about my father and me. Since then, I've tried to live that selflessness out in my own life. I try to make her proud every day. My mother's last words before dying of cancer was to my father. Just as she went under before a desperate surgery to deal with side effects of the cancer she'd been battling for a couple of years, "Run with the boys. All of her children were adults. I think she meant to stay active and involved in our lives. It's a cherished sentence I'll never forget. Only way to double your money every time at a casino? Fold it in half and put it in your pocket. The only way to make money at a casino is to work there. My uncle to me when I was a kid. Don't compare yourself to your sister. You two are both amazing in your own right. I struggled with living in the shadow of my sister's academic prowess. All the teachers knew who she was and expected me to be the carbon copy of her. I put so much pressure on myself to be just as good, and my mom saw me struggling and said this to me one day. It took a while, but I finally realized that I am my own person with qualities that are unique to me and make me a good person. My older sister was always beautiful. Head cheerleader, lots of friends. When she went away to college, people would stop me in the grocery store to ask about her and tell me how gorgeous she was. It made me hate myself. A few years ago, when I was 25 or so, it finally occurred to me that maybe my sister had been jealous of me too. I was the smart one. Nobody even ever bothered to ask her what she thought about anything. So one night we got drunk, and I asked her if she ever felt bad because I was the smart one, and she answered, "Of course! Everyone was always going on about how bright you were. It made me crazy." Dad scolded me until I was in tears for buying an expensive watch. Around $3. I was probably 11. My parents took the opposite approach. I saved and bought an $80 Lego set. My parents thought I was nuts, but it was money that I had earned, and I knew what I wanted, so they let me get it. I came home, put the set together as quickly as I could, stared at it, and cried. That was not worth $80. Lesson learned. Great parents. Whenever I want to buy something online, I put it in my cart and then sleep over it in the night. I give it a day to settle down, and the next day I don't end up buying it at all. The impulse to shop is blunted if you think about it and give it some time. When I was like 4 years old, my mom told me that if you don't pull out a splinter, it travels in and pierces your organs and you die. Whenever I went near splintery wood, I got terrified I was going to get a splinter and not find out until my organs explode. Right about when my hormones started kicking in at age 11, I started crying because my mom told me the splinter in my finger might get loose and travel to my brain. I wasn't upset over that fear, but rather that my mom could be so insensitive about such a dire situation and let me go to bed with this in my finger. Hormones are, so weird. You told me you wanted a cookie. When I was about 15, my mother went to Tim Hortons and I gave her some change and asked her to bring me back a bagel. She brought back a cookie instead and told me that's what I said to get. I locked myself in my room and cried harder than I think I've ever cried before in my life. Because the day before it was, I didn't scream and swear at you earlier. I have no idea what you're talking about. The week before it was, I have never hit you, but if you're so convinced it happened, let's just call CPS and have them take you away to a foster family who will beat you for real. The week before that it was, I didn't push you down the stairs. I barely even tapped you and then you just fell, etc., etc., etc. At this point, it had been about 4 years of her flying into rages and then trying to convince me it never happened. The cookie broke me. The fact that she still felt the need to lie and pin the blame on me even over something as inconsequential as getting my order wrong was just too much for me to handle. I still get upset thinking about it. Yeah, obviously, all the serious stuff was terrible, but the fact that she couldn't just admit to something as minor as getting me the wrong snack, that's messed up on a whole other level. In my eyes, at least. This is called gaslighting, and it's a serious form of emotional abuse. Are you out of her house now? Something my dad told me that's always stuck with me. Once we were driving to pick up my stepmom. I was around 11 or 12. For reference, my dad used to be a bank manager before he retired. He told me about a customer he had a few years back that had immigrated to Canada, and after working several different jobs, he decided he wanted to open his own business. Now, according to my dad, this guy's credit wasn't super stellar, but it wasn't awful, but his business idea was considered high risk. My dad told the man the bank couldn't give him a loan, and the guy were distraught. He begged and pleaded, swearing up and down he would be successful and pay back the money. Now, this was back before everything was done with computers and your loan was actually accepted or denied by a person. So my dad told the man he'd do what he could. A couple days later, my dad called the man and told him he approved the loan and the man was ecstatic. Fast forward a few years, and the man's business is booming, as well as several others he started up. He's one of the bank's best customers. After telling me the story, he pulls the car over and looks me in the eyes and says, "I approve that man because I saw something in him. He had what you call good character, and having good character is more important than money." Some people are also really good at exploiting people by being great at pretending to have great character. Definitely a fine art to be able to pick up genuine good character. My mother said something to me when we were getting her passport renewed. This was in June 2016. The option was for a 5 or a 10-year renewal. I checked off 10 years, and she just chuckled and told me not to waste my money. I asked her why. She said, "I'm 77 years old." She passed away 4 months later. My mother was debating whether to get a brand new car or a second-hand one. I said to her, "It's probably going to be the last car you get, so it should be brand new so you can enjoy it and rely on it." She's 71, but still, pretty stupid of me to needlessly remind her of her mortality. Kick self. Never underestimate how much a dollar can buy, so be careful with your money. I'm now the type of person Frugal Jerk makes fun of. I had a dream where someone said that coins are not real money, and I can spend them on coffee without feeling shame. Grew up in a violent, abusive family. Dad was an alcoholic and beat mom. Mom, in turn, emotionally and physically beat us. I was constantly compared to my cousin, who was prettier and smarter than me, and who hit puberty first, so she was womanlier while I stayed an awkward tomboy. I was 8 years old, and I walked into my mother screaming, "Call the police! Help!" I ran upstairs and my mother was screaming, "He tried to strangle me, verbally abusive cat, call the police!" While my dad screamed, "Don't listen to her, she tried to hit me in the head." I was extremely confused and just burst into tears. When my dad stormed out to go to the pub, my mom looked at me in disgust and spat, "Your cousin would have called the police on him. I wish she was my daughter instead." It's probably one of the most hurtful things anyone has ever said to me. It absolutely disgusts me that anyone would treat their children like that. I'm so sorry we were raised by those monsters. I hope you're doing better now. Thank you, I am. I was kicked out at 18, and although it was one of the worst times of my life, it was honestly the best thing that could have happened to me. Honestly, my life is good, and I save a lot of money on Christmases and for Mother's and Father's Day too. What is a bad parenting tip that sounds like a good parenting tip? Part 1. My sister has the habit of buying both of my nephews presents, but she does it in a way that she thinks is fair. I mean, say it's my oldest nephew's birthday. Well, she buys them both toys that they don't feel left out. Same for the younger one. If, say, one of them gets good grades or has done something good, they both get presents. I mean, that's awesome, but I feel that that might be a bad parenting habit since she's spoiling them both at the same time. And most of the time, the oldest fights over the younger one's toys because he chooses something that interested him later on. So I don't think it's working. Sounds to me like she's teaching them to coast on someone else's work. I've bought presents for children on their siblings' birthdays before, but I bought the birthday kid a couple of actual toys and bought the sibling a chocolate bar or something. Just something tiny. Keep your kids super clean and away from potential allergens. If your children don't come into contact with germs, they won't have any immunities to them. So many kids my daughter plays with are obsessed with hand sanitizer, and so I have to keep explaining to her that it's bad for her to use. We never use hand sanitizer at home, so whenever we go to the hospital or doctor's office, my oldest hits up every single dispenser. Every single one. Even if they are only 10 feet apart and we pass 20 of them on the way to wherever we are going. It's the only time I don't mind him overdosing on sanitizer. Make up a scary lie as a consequence to get your child to do as you say. For example, if you don't get to sleep, you will die. Child proceeds to have trouble sleeping because they're scared of dying for not sleeping. My brother-in-law's SO did this to her 4-year-old. She told her that her dad was in the hospital, he's in jail, and that is why she never sees him. So when she was in an accident, had to go to the hospital, she was okay, none of her injuries were life-threatening. The poor kid freaked out thinking she wasn't going to see her mom again. I understand a 4-year-old might not be able to grasp the idea of prison, but I think it really creates a problem with how the child sees hospitals and doctors. I might be a bit late to this, but if you ignore them, they will leave you alone. Whoever made up this advice originally is stupid. This hardly works in adults, let alone children who still don't understand the too far line when joking and teasing. I work with middle and high schoolers, and there are times when this is applicable, but it gets way over-applied. For example, teenagers will sometimes say rude things to someone else just to try and make them feel bad. If they don't get the reaction they want, they frequently lose interest. If the reaction is dramatic, tears, or a blow-up, you can bet they'll remember. But yeah, far too often this line is used as an excuse for the adult not to actually do something constructive. Have a second child so they can babysit each other. LOL, my brother is 9 years older than me. He was always supposed to be my babysitter. When I was 6, so Kiki, my bro, was 15, my parents went away on a trip and left him in charge with a list of chores. Well, I ended up doing most of those and making dinner for us. And when I was done, I walked 2 blocks to my friend Anne-Marie's to go play. Kiki was asleep, so I didn't tell him I was gone. It was like noon. Kiki received a very angry phone call from Anne-Marie's mother, who yelled at him that he needed to be actually watching his 6-year-old sister. She also called Mom, who called Kiki to yell at him again. Poor boy cried. 14 years later, and when it's just the 2 of us taking care of a task, I'm still in charge. He may be my older brother, but Sis is the one who gets things done. I love him to death, though. Lying to your kids to explain difficult things. I get that in some situations, like if someone commits suicide, telling an alternative story may be a good idea. But for 99% of situations or questions a kid asks, a parent should respond factually. Agreed. I'd have appreciated an honest response so many times during my childhood over the lies I was told instead. They told me my dog had passed away overnight at the vet from a spinal injury which I was aware of. I was horrified that she died cold and alone in a foreign cage with nobody to comfort her. Turns out they put her down, surrounded by people that loved her and cared for her, who comforted her and held her as it happened. Why lie? Don't let your kids fail. The worst thing we can do as parents is never allow our kids to fail. We only fail them as parents by never allowing them to face disappointment and are robbing them from the ability to learn some basic life skills. Let your kids fail, fall on their face, pick themselves up and rub the dirt off. My 3rd grade students had a Newcomb, variation of volleyball, tournament last year in PE against the rest of the 3rd grade classes. My class was in the final game, which we ended up losing pretty badly. The majority of my students were in tears that they lost. The few that weren't crying were kids who participated in sports. It was quite an eye-opening experience as a teacher. Let them beat you at games. No. Play a game with a good handicap mechanic, randomness or explicit, that lets you beat them closer to 50% of the time, and ideally lets you adjust the handicap as they start winning more. Or switch games to something more complex, but keep its randomness at a level so that they can beat you legitimately, but definitely not always. They need to learn how to deal with loss, how to adjust their behavior based on what's happening to them. Forget that oft-touted idea of teaching them that things will be handed to them, which is true, though I detest the bleak pessimism we often see it portrayed with. More importantly, you're lying to them about which things that happen to them are important and can be learned from. Put another way, a lot of parenting ideas seek to shield children from consequences. Also, don't give them all the consequences all at once. Let them face consequences, but at a level appropriate to where they are in life and ever increasing in severity, with spikes and lulls in relative difficulty for them to handle. Saw something interesting recently. A good way to teach a younger child chess and keep them interested is allow them to switch sides when they want to. If they're losing horribly, they'll suddenly be winning, but they'll need to understand the game to take it the rest of the way. If they are throwing a tantrum, distract them by giving sweet treats or a new toy. My nephew is 2. Whenever he throws a tantrum, his parents say screw it and give him candy because they don't want to deal with it. When he throws a tantrum at my house, I let him cry it out for a little while, then offer him water. Works like a charm. He stops crying, he learns to do what I ask him to when I ask him to, and we get to hug it out in the end. Do as I say, not as I do. My dad still uses this one. I always respond with, monkey see, monkey do. Constantly tell your kids they're the smartest kids ever. Praise effort rather than innate ability. Get your kids into a strict bedtime routine. This is great for the very early years, but once you start incorporating stories and such, you have to mix things up a bit, or you'll get stuck in a situation where you can't shortcut anything or your kids won't be settled. Have to make them adaptable. So true. My sister's kids have a crazy, intricate bedtime routine, and if I forget or don't know about one aspect of it, the kids freak out and I no longer trust it. Madness. Yep, that's a rookie parenting mistake. Now, they lose the ability to get babysitters or have grandparents watch the kids when stuff comes up. General clinginess will continue longer than it should. Your child can never do wrong. Something else must be the problem. This is very true, but so is its inversion. Some parents never trust their kid telling them something is wrong. From something as minor as an unfair teacher, to as severe as being uncomfortable with someone who turns out to be a molester, a lot of parents just don't trust their kids at all. I feel like this was me, and I honestly have no idea how much of it was just default mistrust and how much of it I actually earned. Either way, when I was 16, I was fired from my awesome summer job over a complete misunderstanding. Manager offered me my job back later. Bunch of people quit over it anyway. I cried after it happened, and luckily a bunch of my coworkers sat me down to talk it out. My dad, on the other hand, didn't so much as let me speak up in my own defense when he came to pick me up. He just assumed I was a horrible employee, and we drove home in one of the most tensely silent car rides of my life. Let your toddler play with your phone to calm them down. My 2-year-old niece was playing with my brother's phone and ended up on Instagram liking dudes' pics. Give them treats and rewards every time they do a chore or something around the house. Your reward is getting to live here, the clothes on your back, and the toys you play with. It doesn't matter how miserable and toxic your marriage becomes, you need to stay with your partner to keep the family together. I was 8 and wished my parents would divorce. I agree with this as bad parenting. It was hard for me to break up with others later in life because of the image of love they painted. I felt like I should be trying harder to make it work, or to forgive them for being jerks. You have the right to invade your child's privacy because it's for their own good. There are specific situations where I think doing this can be condoned, but I'm talking about the parents who go through the kid's diary, social platforms, closets, everything, just because their kid is acting secretive or because the parents have a hunch. Children of parents like that will grow up to be mistrusting of others, among other issues. I would know. Thanks, Mom. Your kid probably won't act so sketchy around you if you taught them early about good communication and trust. Snooping around their stuff and not giving them their own space is not good for either of you. Trust is not a one-way deal. Strict parents raise the best liars. Can confirm. My mother could never understand why I lied so much. 1, because I have a chance of not getting in trouble and therefore not getting hit. 2, because she was unreasonable, and I didn't feel I could trust her to know certain aspects of my life. Surround your baby with lots of pillows that he's comfortable and won't roll over. Place the baby in a small pool of warm water, like a bathtub, to sleep in. This mimics the baby's natural environment, the amniotic sac, with the warm water acting as a replacement for amniotic fluids. Stalk your child on social media to make sure they are safe. Or try hiding in plain sight, always tagging them with wishy-washy, "I love my son or daughter," like if you love yours, graphics with way too few pixels. Friend all of their friends, post random things you wish were inside jokes on their timeline at least once a day, and don't forget political posts. Basically, digitally piss all over your kid's social media to passive-aggressively show the world, that is your kid. Back off. The more children you have, the more money the government gives you. When I was 12, I was living in the UK above a fish and chip shop. There was a school nearby, and the 14-plus-year-olds were allowed to get food from a few shops on my street. One day, a 14 or 15-year-old girl came in while I was downstairs in the shop foraging for some chips, and the guy serving her asked her what she wanted to do when she grows up. She replied, "I'm sleeping with lots of guys so I can get pregnant, have a baby, and get my own house from the government, like my sister just did." I lived in Dagenham. Some Essex folks might be like, makes sense now. And this attitude was just so common there. Babies equals government housing and money, therefore independence at a very young age. They sort of tend to forget there will be a baby also. What is a bad parenting tip that sounds like a good parenting tip? Part 2. Console them when injured and don't let them climb or find themselves in any hazardous situations. Now, I don't mean to say never console any injury, just most. I stopped reacting at an early age with my daughter while allowing her to jump on the bed and climb ladders and balance on wood piles, and I have the toughest, most independent child ever. Serious falls. She just gets up and walks away. No tears. She has incredible hand-eye coordination and impeccable balance. Please note that the statement is within the realm of reason. It's not like I'm telling her to suck it up with a split forehead or encouraging her to climb on zoo fences. Here's what my dad used to say if we got hurt. You bleeding? You dying? No? Go back outside and play. And if we did get really hurt, he'd just wash it out, Neosporin or alcohol, Band-Aid, good to go. I had a pretty large gash on the side of my leg from a broken part of my bike. It was big enough that any parent with no experience in parenting would have called an ambulance and wanted to get stitches for their kid. Not my dad, though. Wash it out, put some salt on it, clean it again, Neosporin, some gauze and gauze tape, and I was good to go. Nowadays, I'll actually hurt myself, like cut the tip of my finger off with a vegetable peeler, and I'll just go, I'll live, and just clean it off and keep going. Thanks, Dad. Keep the household quiet when baby is sleeping. We are a busy household. 4 dogs, 2 cats, a 2-year-old, and a 2-month-old. If I want to blend a smoothie, listen to music, or vacuum the house, I do it. We do not tiptoe. My kids sleep through noise. As long as you don't do what my folks did, namely, anything is fair game while the kids are sleeping, but if you so much as run a faucet too loud while parents are sleeping, it's yelling. Reward your kid with food and treats. Sounds like a good, easy, cheap reward system for when your kid does well in school or finish their chores quickly. My parents did it with me, but the issue is that since they did that, I hold food as being extremely important, and when I have free reign of my own food, I will reward myself for every minor thing I did. Oh hey, I took the trash out. That deserves a cookie. Oh, I went to bed a bit early. That deserves some candy. I had a good KDA and SGO. I should get a piece of cake. Maybe it doesn't work like that for everyone, but most of the people I've met who are overweight or were overweight said they have similar relationships with food, and it was because their parents used it as a reward. I am fighting it though. I've lost 30 pounds in a little over 2 months just from cutting out sugar as much as possible and taking a walk every night. But it's hard for sure, and I would have rather my parents rewarded me with experiences and quality time together instead of with food. I read about a Chinese parent that would reward their kids with vegetables, and it eventually brainwashed them to loving vegetables. Always tell your kids to finish their food. This honestly just promotes obesity and an unhealthy lifestyle, although I get the idea of telling them to finish what's on their plates. It really depends. I'm pretty sure my mom, coming from someone who is overweight their entire childhood and has emotional eating issues, I had free-range snacks and food. While my mom constantly asked me if I wanted to be fat, yet kept buying cheese sticks, fruit roll-ups, gummies, cookies, juice. Oh, the juice. I never drank water growing up, even in high school. Side note, we never have juice in the house. It's a treat, and my son constantly asks for water. Yay! But anyway, some kids, like mine, will refuse meals and constantly ask for snacks, gummies, cookies, etc. He will say he isn't hungry and 5 minutes later ask for sweets. He, age 4, gets well-balanced meals. We use the divided plates, and one section will have veggies, one will have meat, and another will have a grain, yogurt, or fruit, and is expected to finish them if he wants a treat later. If he can't finish it at that moment, that's fine, I'll put it away, but he isn't getting anything else until he finishes his meal. If he's hungry an hour later, he's eating the meal. I'm pretty proud of the fact that my son's favorite food is supposedly broccoli. Tip: if your kid will only eat chicken nuggets, for example, tell them they aren't getting the chicken nuggets. My son hated vegetables. It was only a matter of getting him to try it multiple times to get used to the taste and texture. It took a year, but he is the world's least picky eater. Give your child free rein to self-express. My cousin's aunt and uncle, not my parents, my mother's brother's wife's brother, I believe, and his probably wife, although I didn't really ask, and who knows these days. Get out a pencil and paper if you must. Do this with their daughter, except it's incredibly free rein. We're talking, the child's word is a law, and you're not allowed to do anything about it. It's understandable. The father and my aunt were raised in an environment where their father didn't really care about their opinions, but it is extremely possible to go too far in the other direction if you don't teach the kid about respecting the opinions of others. She is going to have a hard time when she enters the world of real interpersonal interaction, which I hope for her sake comes sooner than age 18. Respect your elders. Respect should be mutual, and my kids shouldn't just take abuse because someone is older than them. I agree with this so much. At 15, I had a blazing row with my aunt. She was in the wrong, but she wanted me to apologize to her because I was a child, and telling my mother that I had no respect for my elders was her most favorite thing. 15 years later, I still won't have anything to do with her, and it's done irreparable damage to my relationship with my mother. Mainly because my mother won't respect my position, and has spent the last 15 years trying to force me to apologize to the aunt and pretend everything is okay and play happy families. This post made me realize my parents didn't raise me so well. They're pretty old, so they had old-fashioned parenting methods. I got spanked until I was 7 or 8, until they decided kids were not for spanking anymore, which isn't that bad. But I also got coddled my whole life. Everything was made easy for me, and I was always told I was the smartest and prettiest and most capable. Left me with high self-esteem and virtually no majorly bad experiences, aside from an abusive sister. But now at 17, I'm still not allowed to do anything for myself. I'm not trusted with any tasks at all, nor am I given any freedom. Worst of all, I'm given no chances to fail because I have no choices. My mom makes all my choices forcibly so that I never suffer any consequences, ever. As for the high self-esteem, I had to do a lot of therapy to recover from, among other things, the crippling realization that I am not, in fact, the smartest and prettiest. Hit me like a train, basically lost all sense of self-worth for a while. Let your kids run wild. Out in the backyard, that is. Kids need to play outside more, discovering stuff, finding cool rocks, poking the ground with sticks, etc. So much this. My son is 4 months old, and I want to encourage this as much as possible once he's old enough. Once he's a teen, he'll have tons of time to binge on Netflix. Now is the time to explore the world together, kiddo. Let's go throw rocks in the pond together. See how they splash? Let's sit on the edge and take off our shoes and socks and put our feet in it. Let's build a tree home for the fairies in the forest. We can make them a soft bed from moss and use a leaf for a bedsheet. If we put enough flat rocks in front of it, they even have a path leading up to their house. My grandpa did this with me. I will cherish this memory forever. Let's go to the botanical gardens and sniff all the flowers. It's raining outside. Let's go dance in it. Feel the rain in your face, and then take a hot bath together and blow bubbles and make our hair look funny with shampoo. Draw. Create. Use clay, paper, paint, whatever you can find. We used to make seasonal trays. In autumn, we'd go to the woods and collect pretty-looking mushrooms and moss and make a nice little still life filled with seasonal stuff. A thunderstorm. We used to count the time between the flash and the sound. 2 little girls standing in front of the window with their dad, eyes wide in astonishment. I so hope to give my son the same joy in discovering the world around us. Make your kids give hugs and kisses to show affection to relatives, friends, etc. I've always let my son decide who he wants to hug and kiss. He can't say no. It teaches him he's allowed to have boundaries. Read your child's diary just to make sure they aren't doing anything that could be harmful. And confront them when they write something that you don't like. And then when they get upset and ask why you read their diary, say, "This is my house and I own everything in it, so I have a right to know what you're doing." Then the kid doesn't feel comfortable writing in their diary ever again and doesn't have any sense of privacy. This can lead to them penting up their feelings with no outlet to express them without judgment, and that can lead to angst, depression, and/or violence. Kid is obviously being bullied on a playground. Adults brush it off as kids being kids. Or if a boy is bullying a girl and they say, "Oh, he just likes you." Don't teach kids that people show affection by bullying. That's setting them up for bad relationships. Don't do that or I'll call the policeman and tell him you have been naughty. Seriously, parents, do not do this. Kids need to trust the police. Teaching them to fear police at a young age is not cool. My mom used to say, "They're coming to get you," whenever we'd hear sirens. As a middle-aged, law-abiding-ish woman, I still get nervous sitting in my own house when I hear a cop car on blast. Save money by buying a used car seat. Car seats, like helmets, are better bought new because you never know the history they have, and you're better off making sure your child is safe. To further clarify, a car seat or a helmet that's been involved in an accident might be compromised even if it appears to be fine. Hairline cracks, material fatigue, a strap being overextended, any one of a dozen different things might be wrong and literally cause the death of your child if you use it and get into an accident. These things are meant to save you from death once and then never be used again. Material fatigue is really underrated. These things are made mostly of plastic and foam. Even if you know the history of the car seat, it's been baking and freezing, exposed to UV rays, and had a kid in it being a kid. Ever find a plastic bottle in the back of a junk car? It crumbles like the flaky crust of a burnt croissant. If you're ever in desperate need for a child seat, contact your local firehouse, police station, or hospital to see if free ones are available, or if you can get a coupon or discount or voucher for a new one. They will be brand new and meet or exceed the requirements to be legal and safe. Give your child a unique and meaningful name. Don't forget to spell it ever so intricately as possible, too. You really want to make sure they are the only one. You really want to make sure they are the only one who can ever spell their name right. Tell your kid to suck it up when things get tough. If I've gotten to the point where I'm stressed and emotional enough to break down in front of my parents, something is very wrong and I've most likely been sucking it up for weeks already. I handle stress well, but we all have our breaking points. Thanks to their helpful advice, I'm afraid to let anyone know if something is bothering me because I don't want to look weak or sound like I'm complaining. It took me years to be able to communicate my stress to my SO, and I still struggle with it. And yes, I'm a woman.
If the world was a school, which type of kid do you think each country would be? New Zealand isn't enrolled in this school. That's what you think. Until you see him on graduation day and think, who's that? What is he doing here? The Netherlands would be the guy that always has a water bottle with him. And rides a bike to school? Yes, also that. Iceland is the kid who everyone knows. They aren't friends with him, but if you mention him, they'll know who he is. And if the entire class gets the flu, he somehow manages to not get infected. Malta would be the kid no one knows, lol. Hangs out with Monaco and Luxembourg playing D&D in a fancy game room above Monaco's 5-car garage. Yeah, actually that. Malta's broke compared to those countries, LMAO. India and Pakistan are brothers that hate each other. And Bangladesh, their little kid sister. Estonia would be the one who secretly drinks alcohol from the cabinet. Luxembourg is the nerdy kid that no one talks to, but is actually extremely rich. He would totally hang out with Monaco and maybe Singapore and Liechtenstein and San Marino. Spain would be the kid that skips classes and hangs out with Portugal, Italy and Greece, doing not much, but then surprisingly passes the course. They're all smoking cigarettes all the time, every day in the courtyard with jackets pulled up to their ears, and they're all quite beautiful in that unapproachable way, appearing to be mysterious, but really there's not much there behind the facade. The cast of Grease! New Zealand is the guy you've never noticed until graduation. He's getting an award for something and you turn to the country next to you and say, who's that? Never seen him before. Coincidentally, he was out of frame on the school picture. Y'all remember those 2 huge school brawls Germany started? Austria remembers. Austria started that first one and got Germany blamed for it. He also managed to get his brother Hungary in trouble for it, even though he thought it was a bad idea the whole time and just got strung along into the mess. Austria-Hungary was the popular, beautiful power couple. However, Serbia was obsessed with Austria and finally decided if he couldn't have Austria, nobody could. So Serbia told Hungary that Austria was cheating and told Austria that Hungary was cheating. The entire school immediately split into 2 factions. Cliques broke up, reorganized, and eventually settled down. Then there was the one kid who was originally with the art kids, but they didn't like him, so he ended up joining a gang of skinheads, then ran for class president. Scotland would be the wee skinny Raj kid in a tracksuit and gelled hair, trying to start fights with everyone bigger than him by just getting up in their face and yelling, "Square go! Square go!" I envision a scenario where Wales is a rugby player, built like a brick house, likes protein shakes and weightlifting, loves a few drinks with the lads down the rugby club, which will serve him even though he's clearly not 18 yet. Can sing very well and will burst your eardrum if you stand too close to him whilst he's singing the national anthem. Has solidarity with Scotland in the fact that they like to beat up England behind the spa on a Friday night. Scotland and Wales don't hang out, but have respect for each other through their shared hatred of England. Finland, the one kid who wears shorts when it's freezing. Finland, the one kid who moved in the summer between grade 1 and grade 2 and no one heard from him again. Everyone remembers him except America, who doesn't believe he ever existed. Australia would be the loud, massive guy that lives for the next party so he can chug a beer. Australia would be Corey Worthington, that kid who threw the party that had helicopters and police tanks called in. Nigeria would be the kid pushing the pyramid scheme that occasionally makes its way around the school. Rubbish! Nigeria would come from royalty and claim to be hosting the biggest party ever, TM, but he needs you to RSVP and buy tickets at $100 so that he can show you the venue organizers that he ain't talking crap. Japan is the kid that Naruto runs. I think that Japan would be constantly scribbling in his notebook. When someone gets a hold of his notebook, they see that it's a script for something. A show based off of the high school drama Hetalia. Greenland is the quiet, suicidal kid. That's Lithuania. Greenland is that kid that lived in the middle of the forest. He gets to school somehow, even in the worst weather, has no friends in school, and kind of smells. Ireland is frequently absent because he's down the field drinking cans with the lads. The lads being Poland and Czech Republic, and occasionally throwing his empty cans in England's back garden because England used to bully him in primary school. South Sudan would be the new kid who just joined. The new kid who is going through an identity crisis and has an inferiority complex for his brother, Sudan. Sweden is for sure one of them goody two-shoe hall monitors that gets good grades and are kind to the bullied. Also hangs out with his fellow Scandinavians who argue constantly. I'm picturing the Scandinavians as really hot blonde girls clique that gossip behind each other's backs. They don't realize how blessed they are with genetics and being a part of loving, supportive families. South Africa would be from mixed race parents that had an enormously abusive marriage but have agreed to stick together for the sake of the kid. As a result, South Africa has violent tendencies, is often racist to both white and black, and is known to steal things all the time. On the upside, as kids go, it has moments of clarity where he tries his best, but on the whole is really confused, likes hanging out with China and Brazil, and frequently tries, unsuccessfully, to pick on Britain. South Africa is the person who shoots himself in the foot and then blames both black and white people for the shooting. I'm Greek, and we're that poor kid that you hang out with because it doesn't have many friends, and eventually you stop being around them because they always ask you for money. They don't return. On the other hand, you're incredibly attractive and used to be the brightest kid in school. You're just going through an awkward phase. Your house is also amazing and everyone wants to go to your house parties. Brazilian here. We would be that clown type that sits in the back, almost failing but making fun of his own situation. True Brazil is the class clown, always joking about things for sure. Colombia is the kind at school with a bad reputation, but who's actually pretty nice to hang out with. Myanmar and Cambodia would be two kids that keep getting confused for each other by the non-Asian kids, even though they're totally different people in just about every way. How do you confuse them? One is French, the other's British. There's literally a Thailand between them, and the names don't even sound similar. Yeah, I feel it should be Cambodia and Laos. Austria would be the one kid that always does bad things but never gets punished for it because he blames it on others. Switzerland would be the one introvert who never takes active part in a discussion but is always listening and gets good grades. After school, Switzerland went on to become a financial analyst. New Zealand would be the kid that hangs around with the tough guys and the smart guys, but isn't a good friend, just kind of there for some reason and nobody actually knows how they got in with those groups. Andy is really nerdy, his family is nice, and his house is really cool and old, but it is a bit rickety. North Korea is the kid with autism standing in the middle of the cafeteria screaming, and everyone has to act like they aren't there. And who's constantly sucking off to China. Cuba would be off by itself, smoking one of its fine cigars. Italy would get mad over the food machine but not care about grades. China would be the kid whose parents used to be poor, so he wore crummy clothes and had old mobile phones, but now they are much richer. So the kid gets a new tablet every year, wears designer clothes just to show off how much money they have now. France would be the snobbish artistic kid who is hated and admired by everyone at the same time. Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan would be expelled from the school for bad behavior. Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan would be subject to vigilante justice from a bunch of frat boys who actually want their endless lunch yogurt. South Africa would be that foreign kid that transferred halfway through the school year, but has lived in like 15 different countries and is full of cool stories. He is a hit with the ladies, but sadly he moves away again in his junior year and nobody hears from him again. His dad was also in prison for a while, but when he got out, he became a really well-respected member of the community. Japan would have spent his first few years being homeschooled, and when he finally got transferred to public school, his first instinct was to go crazy and give people wedgies or noogies, especially China. His luck turned when he picked a fight with America and got his butt beat really bad, with some help from America's homemade Coca-Cola Mentos projectiles. They hugged it out on the bus ride home and they've been pals ever since. Now, he's the genius kid who finishes tests in 5 minutes and spends the rest of class watching cartoons or building cool stuff in Minecraft. Venezuela would be the kid who had money before and was popular in their clique, but the family lost all their money and friends because their dad is dumb. Now, kid asks for scraps and help with everything and says they want to leave school. The rest of the school would be concerned about him, and Brazil and the US would be willing to do something with his dad. The UK and Ireland would be constantly trading tit-for-tat blows with each other, but at the end of the day will always drink with each other on the school fields because they've been through a lot of crap together. Italy's loud, lazy, and likes to show off ostentatiously, but is a sound lad to be around. Greece would be a laid-back B average student who tries to not cause a commotion but has a bit of a spending issue and is good friends with Bulgaria, who is just as laid back. Montenegro would be the kid who always sleeps in class. Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan would both be underrated students that nobody really pays attention to, while Turkmenistan just hates everything and everyone. Indonesia would be a large-built but quiet kid. Russia is a pact leader who is Dutchy yet very smart, athletic, and artistic. He probably once had a rough home life. His favorite targets are Ukraine and Georgia. Greece would have a lot of cousins all over school. Poland is that poor kid who always gets bullied. Czech Republic here, we're that guy who's always drunk, has parts of tracksuits and sometimes has brilliant ideas in classes. America, China, and Russia would be the really popular kids who bully people. North Korea is the wannabe, and Germany is the former bully who regretted it and helps others a lot. America is the evangelical Christian from a well-off family. You can't tell if they're going to be kind and help you out in your time of need or beat you with their biblical knowledge. That's more like Poland, TBH.
What is your favorite, easy, lazy way to make side money? I set up an aluminum can-only bin outside my college dorm. Easy $60 every week. Illegal? I don't know, but it worked. That's genius and environmentally friendly. Everyone loves the can bandit. Suing telemarketers. There's a company that does secret shopper stuff. The only company that does it in my area is Papa John's. But basically, I order a pizza, take pictures of it, complete a survey, and 2 months later, they pay me back for the pizza. They also sometimes offer rewards from $5 to $20. It's not much money, but it is free pizza. My mom used to be heavily in mystery shopping. I got to help her out one time when I was underage by going into a GameStop and seeing if they'll sell me an M-rated game without checking ID or to someone under 18 or 17. My mom said they've sent her to stay at resorts and stuff too. Pretty nifty gig that can be a lot of fun on top of making money and getting free stuff. I edit, proofread, and format resumes and cover letters through Kijiji. It helps that in my current career I am frequently asked to sit in and be a part of the interviewing process for numerous departments. So I often give advice where I can, on top of simply making the pages look clear and concise. Craigslist, copywriting, and editing. If you're half decent with spell check and occasionally read a newspaper, you'll be able to pick it up while watching a favorite show in the background. You make a simple ghostwriter name, set up a PayPal, and take on any amount of work you want. Best part is, you'll drastically improve your writing without thinking about it, a skill that will passively help you out elsewhere. Knew someone that would go on Riot chat boards, claim to be a girl, ask for account boosts in League, get carried to high ranks, and then sell the accounts. I occasionally referee for tournaments at a few gun clubs, sporting clays. $75 a day to push a few buttons and yell one of two words. Not amazing money. By the end of the day, the hourly works out to slightly less than the minimum wage in my state, but relative to the amount of work I'm doing, it's top-notch. Isn't the whole point of minimum wage that you're not meant to be paid less than that? Or is it not technically a job? It's not really a job. The tournaments only take up like 4 weekends a year. The rest of the time, ranges will employ target trappers or referees who make minimum wage, and sometimes tips. The tournaments that I do aren't intended to be anything more than a side gig for hobbyists. You actually get your choice of payment between the $75 cash or 200 targets to use at the ranges. Dungeon diving, bandit killing, just side quests. Dupe glitches is where the real gold's at. If glitches are on the table, you might as well just use the console. Pet sitting. Clients will pay me to sleep in their house and care for their dog, and eat their food, and watch their TV. Easily cleared $200 a week when I did this regularly over a decade ago. Even more if the little guy gets medicine or has any conditions that require more care. Easiest money ever. I keep all the change whenever my mom gives me money to buy something. When I was a kid, I agreed to do the laundry if I got to keep everything I found in the pockets. After making about $90 the first day, I was quickly dismissed from this hustle. Plus, everyone complains about doing laundry. All you do is throw it in the machine. It's not hard, people. We rent our house out for a popular annual convention. 3 weeks, and the exhibitors we rent to are gone all day. We work from home and occupy the house the majority of the day. We set up a bed in my unattached workshop, so all we really change is where we sleep. I have one of those t-shirt shops online where I just uploaded some graphics and they put them on t-shirts, coffee mugs, etc., and I get $1 or $2 every time one is sold. Try and get on merch by Amazon if you can. There is a waiting list, but if you get there, the rates are much better. Being a movie or TV extra. Free food, lots of downtime, and getting to hang out on set and see how everything happens. Sometimes shoots are long or you're doing something boring or uncomfortable, but most of the time it's chill. Sometimes shoots are long or you're doing something boring or uncomfortable. Yeah, I was an extra in a movie once where we were all corpses, and this one girl kept hamming it up. Then she got kicked and her replacement started eating sausages out of his pocket. We had to reshoot for hours. Whenever a Nigerian scammer emails me, I always point out all the inconsistencies of their common sense and offer to give them proper guidance on how to actually scam people online. I will give them a few brief lessons via XMPP, Secure Chat Protocol, and once I've gained their confidence, I will offer to sell them an advanced technique for only $250. The moment they send the payment, they never hear from me again and I abandon the XMPP screen name. So far, I've made around $1,500 in the last 3 years doing this. Scamming the scammers, brilliant. I read about one guy who worked from home and was sick of the telesales calls interrupting his workflow, as it cost him time and money. So he made his phone number a premium rate and earned money every junk call he got. How do you set this up? Be British, but there are probably equivalents elsewhere. Selling candy in school. Kids will pay a crap ton extra since they can't buy it anywhere else during the school day. Although some kids offer loans, which I never receive payment on. I did this in school too. Never give loans. I would always tell them you can have one when you have the money. Making Rice Krispies treats and selling them at work. Selling plasma. How does one begin this? I know I can sell my plasma, but I have no idea how or where to do it. Google your local plasma places. CSL is the one I did when I lived out in Denver. Go there, scope it out and make sure it's not too dirty, etc. Bring some mail with your address on it. The first time you're there will take some time because a nurse is going to need to check you out and make sure you're good to go for donation. If you're in an urban environment, your center might be really busy, so you could be in line for a while when you go. Basically, you show up, wait for a bed to open up, and then you get hooked to a machine that takes some of your blood, spins the plasma out, and returns the red blood cells to you, and repeats for about a half an hour until a certain amount of plasma has been extracted. Then you get some saline back and some money loaded onto a card. Most places let you come around twice a week, and in general, get $25 to $40 a pop depending on where you live. Lots of places will have generous specials when you first start through offering 80, 60, etc. for the first 6 to 10 donations. It's just annoying to do, IMO. I was really poor out in Denver and did it twice a week for the good part of a year to basically pay for my bus passes to and from work since I didn't make enough. If you do it regularly for a long time, you might get kind of sick. I think I wound up deficient on several vitamins from doing that. A year or two later, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, so the vitamin deficiencies could have been from that instead, YMMV. Don't push yourself too hard, stay nice and hydrated if you plan on doing that, and don't eat fatty foods the day before or the day of your donation. After donating is fine, but fat gets filtered out and can drastically slow things down. Bonus, used to be terrified of needles, now gently encourage nurses when they have trouble drawing blood. Can't watch, but don't mind if someone sort of new needs a couple tries to get it right. Selling ant queens. They go anywhere from $20 for the common species to $75 for the rarer ones. Where do you get them? Out of the ground? Where do you sell them? You have to live with the ants, become one with the ants, gain their trust, mate with the queen. In the process, kidnap her and extort a ransom from the hive, and then sell her to some dude halfway across the country. Easy money. I used to do math homework for people. Made $200 off of one guy once. He was a rich student athlete behind on his college algebra homework by a month. Took me like 2 or 3 hours. How do you manage to do a month of homework in any math class that quickly? Most math classes I've been to give homework every day, so assuming 70% of days he has school, that's 21 homework assignments in 150 minutes. Assuming that OP got his old homework back, he could just copy his answers but skew his handwriting to look more like the athlete. Photocopy real money and hope for the best. Funny enough, modern printers and photocopiers refuse to print money. Photoshop refuses to display it. I put in $250 in Bitcoin right before the BTC-BCH divergence, 1st August this year, and since then made $50 profit. My friend boosts people's accounts and coaches people in League of Legends. He can get pretty good rates for the coaching, and boosting is a bit more based on luck, getting the order or getting decent teammates. But generally, 2 to 4 days can make €100 from it. Living expenses are lower here, so that's actually very good pay, if you're ready to no lie for it. Making YouTube videos. I struck gold with a fun idea that was both easy to make and super fun. So far, I'm making about $150 a month. If you live near a golf course, preferably a public one, you can be a caddy. All you have to do is know a little bit about golf and carry a bag. You could also search for golf balls and sell it afterwards. I've worked at 3 courses in my life and only one of them offered caddies during your round, and it was a very nice country club. So it has to be a nicer place, and I would say you have to know more than just a little bit about golf to be one. Some people will legit rely on you to pick their club or give your advice. But finding golf balls for sure is a good one. The course I work at right now has a huge creek running through it that people always lose balls in. Can't sell them for more than $0.5 to $1 a piece, but it adds up for sure. I rent out my barn. I don't use it for anything, and this dude pays me $400 a month to use the space. I'm almost positive it's a chop shop, but it helps pay the bills. My dad has a big greenhouse, and he rents it out for $1,000 a month. The folks that rent it have a research grant and are growing unique strains of fruits and vegetables. I worked for them, pollinating flowers for a couple seasons. Really neat. App called S'more. It puts ads on your phone's lock screen for 10 cents a day that you can cash out with various gift cards, usually starting at $5. If you're the type that isn't glued to your phone, it's basically free money. Otherwise, it can get a bit annoying. So far, I've earned about $8, but will probably uninstall it right when I hit $10. Buying stuff from a thrift store and flip it at a consignment store. If it doesn't sell at the consignment store, take it back to thrift store within the return window. I haven't seen it in the thread yet, so Google rewards. Take less than 30-second surveys, get anywhere between 10 cents and $1. It's not much, but it's how I fund Pokemon Go. I made some side money by supervising these school kids for an hour every Wednesday, which was not even bad because I do some of my writing stuff within then. Looks good on a college app too.
What items for under $10 would amaze people from 100 years ago? A solar-powered calculator. Dude! They were still a couple of years out from the physics theory that led to photovoltaics. The plastic casing and computer chip as well would be fantastically advanced to them. This gets you 3 mind-blowings in one. Good answer. Laser pointer. My girlfriend bought a laser pointer at the dollar store earlier this week. That blows my mind. I got a web camera there for $3. About 20 years ago, a company I worked for bought a digital camera. Same 640 by 480 resolution for $1,000. My grandmother was 100 before she passed away. She had an answer for this question. Her answer was a little broader since it didn't have a price cap, but it fits. Scotch tape. Have you ever tried to wrap a present with twine? Scotch tape became the go-to tool for most home projects. This woman didn't have indoor plumbing until her 20s, didn't have refrigeration until her 30s, didn't have a car in the family until her late 30s. She saw every world war, the birth of the airline industry, saw the population of the US grow by 10 times, rode a horse for the first 30 years of her life, saw the birth of electronics, the highway system, the emergence of antibiotics, the space program, Velcro, television, washing machines, satellites, mass production. Nope. Scotch tape changed her life. Everything else was a convenience. She was also a bit of a wit, so she might have been half kidding. My grandfather, who lived to be nearly 100 when he died in the 90s, said that the biggest innovation he could think of being developed in his life wasn't a thing at all. It was the process and feedback control of supply chains. It let him eat exotic fruit at relatively reasonable prices in the dead of the Canadian winter, ensured there was fuel for his car, and he could FedEx a present to his relatives in Western Europe in just a few days for about the same price as sending a package the slowest way possible cost in the 1940s. A digital watch, though they would undoubtedly find it unattractive. Ziploc bags. Ideal for storing leftovers to help stretch your food dollar. Calculator. Calculator watch. That 20 questions gadget. It never guessed when I was thinking of the 20 questions device itself. Someday it will achieve self-awareness though. I would say a pregnancy test. The ability to pee on a stick and divine the future might impress someone. It impressed me when I was able to get a handful of them at the dollar store last week. My grandfather ran a blood lab in the 1920s where they did pregnancy testing. For every test they had to kill a rabbit for the antibodies in its blood. He would be amazed if he were around. That's where you get that old expression, the rabbit died. If a man said the rabbit died, that meant his wife was pregnant. Funny story. A friend of mine met up with my family and his girlfriend's pet rabbit had really died that week and he told us. My dad thought he was using the old expression and said, "Congratulations!" And the friend said, "For what?" "Your girlfriend is pregnant," my dad said. The friend says, "How did you know?" They hadn't told anyone yet. One of the greeting cards that plays music. A photograph of the Earth. Earthrise still blows my mind. Sheet of plexiglass or polycarbonate. Clear like glass, but shatter resistant, light, and incredibly flat. Unit cost is so low because of many underlying technology and advancements. Polycarbonate is pretty expensive. Sheet metal is still cheaper. Retail? That intuitively seems opposite. Depends on exact specs, I'm sure. The hand warmer things you buy in the checkout aisle at Walmart. Just open it. Contact with the air equals heat. Hand them a large movie popcorn and tell them it costs $9.99. That'll freak them out. According to an online inflation calculator, that would be the same as $229.02 today, so your theory checks out. Tupperware. A cheap vibrator, like a pocket rocket. When I was younger, I would play a NASCAR game on my PS2. I would go into a race and purposefully pop all my tires. With the tires popped, my controller would vibrate and I would put the controller on my junk. Candy, or any food for that matter, with artificial colors and flavors. Imagine their reaction when they're given something blue raspberry flavored. Blue raspberry? But raspberries are dark red. What's going on here? Well, we used to color them dark red, but that ended up giving everyone cancer. So yeah, we just went with the only color we had left. Diapers for babies. My great aunt bought some Pampers way back when, and you had to pin them. Now they are completely convenient with the Velcro tabs, and you don't have to rinse them out. You can find diapers for under $10 a pack. Loves aren't that expensive. You can get a small pack of them at Walmart for $6. How about a $10 second-hand store microwave? Where would you plug it in? And before anybody talks smack, not everybody had wiring, and the wiring they had was crap. A picture of astronauts on the moon. I like this one because it combines so many incredible modern inventions. Amazing to think that happened just 55 years after 1914. A book about World War II. I'd pair it up with a book on the Cold War. A Happy Meal. I don't know what would confuse them more, the burger or the toy. Or the fact that it promises to keep you happy, but it doesn't. Dragon dildo. Go a few years further and you could impress a few folks down at the tavern with your trophy. Where are you buying dragon dildos for $10? Seriously, I'd like to know. A new $5 bill. The security features alone are so advanced it would blow minds. That and spray cheese. And it has Lincoln on it, so they'd recognize him. A color photograph of Barack Obama in the Oval Office. Penicillin. Dippin' Dots. They're from the future. They'll change everything. Disposable cameras. They had flexible film in 1914, although it was nitrate based and rather flammable. Experiments in color photography were underway also. The image quality would not have impressed them. The resolution of film per square inch hasn't improved much, neither has the resolving power or contrast of lenses in the standard focal length. Film has gotten more light sensitive. Digital has continued this improvement, but an 8x10 inch glass plate negative from 1914 has detail resolution comparable to a 36 megapixel digital camera. Scanning archival photos is a big part of my job. LED microlight, laser pointer level, neodymium magnets, Lexan cutlery set, digital pen thermometer, solar path lights, plastic battery powered toothbrush. Or just a pack of ordinary batteries. Imagine if they had knowledge back then. We would have such awesome e-cars with huge range, smartphones with days of power without recharging. A holographic Pokemon card, a glow stick, a packet of antibiotics. One of the lollipop toys that vibrates music into your head when you touch your teeth with it. Disposable electronic cigarettes, People loved tobacco back then. A cheap cassette voice recorder. They would be blown away that you could record what they say and play it back to them instantly. The recording gramophone was invented in the 1800s. Yeah, but they were prohibitively expensive, and it is likely that very few people even knew they existed. Plus, the sound fidelity and portability alone would absolutely amaze them. A handful of various electronic parts, namely transistors. I demonstrate how they work to scientists and explain how they can be used. Transistors have done more to advance human civilization than any other piece of technology we've ever come up with. If we could have had them 30 years sooner, imagine where we could have been today. A book of inventions from the last 100 years. Any decent action figure with over 10 to 15 points of articulation. The plastic and craftsmanship would wow them, and then explaining that these are mass-produced for children would blow them away. The only small stuff that was that small, detailed, and precisely made were mechanisms for machines and guns, and those were not cheap or made in large quantities. Dude, Transformers. Cheapo shortwave radio. Simple enough for them to understand how advanced it really is, advanced enough to blow their mind. They started working on it in 1896 and got it to work in 1927. If anything, you would just be some guy who figured it out first. Regardless, if you couldn't send or receive transmissions, you would just have a box that couldn't do anything. Yeah, but this will be a small shortwave. Old shortwave radios were massive. The engineering would blow their minds. Wikipedia would not only amaze people, it would change the world in a matter of weeks. What can you transport and read it on for under $10? Microfilm was designed for this sort of problem. The actual information is recorded on rolls of film that are relatively cheap. All you need is a bright light and a microscope to read it, both of which were available 100 years ago. Pop rocks. Deodorant. I used a Pentium 4 computer with a 40 gig hard drive, Half-Life, one running on a 3DFX Voodoo 3 video card, a Sound Blaster or 32, and internet multiplayer. Think you mean a Pentium 2 in the 200 to 300 MHz range. Would fit the era better. LCD watch. One of those really cheap handheld games, like the ones you get from a McDonald's Happy Meal. I saw someone say a picture of Obama in the Oval Office. How about something more imminent and potentially equally offensive to some people at the time? A photo of women voting. A photo of women voting for Obama. A photo of a black woman voting for Obama in the South. Wouldn't be too hard to get. Massive supply of bottle rockets from a 3-for-1 sale after the 4th of July. LED flashlights. A cheap MP3 player from DL Extreme. A Bop It. Nail clippers. 2 modern Lego bricks. Small transformer toy. Lava lamp. CD. Mechanical pencil or pen. LED flashlight. Dual flavor gum. Electric razor. Electric pencil sharpener. Multicolored pen. And a cup of soup. Calculator. Heck, I remember 40 years ago a calculator that could do trigonometric functions costing well over $200. That's $1973. Nowadays, you can get a Texas Instruments scientific calculator that does trigonometric and logarithmic functions for under $10. Remote control helicopter. What is a joke people often make that is never funny? Ah, you bought me lunch! A co-worker every time I order delivery to work. What did you buy us for lunch? I bought me some none of your business. I live in the US, but I'm from Hungary. So when I tell people where I'm from, they're always like, haha, you must be hungry then. I die inside a little every time I hear this joke. You're from Hungary? I'm from Thirsty. I would tell you, but then I would have to kill you. What happens in blah 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 stays in blah blah blah. We know what happened in Vegas. You got drunk and danced with each other. Funny how felony records don't seem to stay in Vegas. You can do mine next when they see you washing your car. I live in an older neighborhood and get this from all my retired neighbors when I mow the lawn or clean the eaves troughs. I always throw out a crazy number like, sure, $250. I usually get, $250? I could hire someone to do it for that. To which I reply, yeah, you'd be hiring me. Saying, run, Forrest, run! Every time you see someone running. As a valet, I hear this 3-4 times a day. When cleaning, you missed a spot, points in any direction. Waitress, cashier for many years. Whenever I got this, I'd get deadpan and ask them to point it out to me so I could finish the job. Oh, no, I was just making a joke. Oh, alright. I don't think they'd make that joke again after that. I've had people intentionally smudge the thing I was cleaning, like leave a handprint if it was a window and say I missed a spot. Working street fairs to promote the dojo I work for, there is always that guy who jumps out in front of me with his hands up and yells, "Yeah!" really loud before laughing and walking away. Yeah, okay buddy, haha, you're the 10th person to do that today, so not really as original as you thought. My dad does this in every Asian restaurant we go to. Working hard or hardly working? Grab them by the neck and squeeze hard, then ask, breathing hard or hardly breathing? Student, can I go to the toilet? Teacher, I don't know. Can you? When I was little, I didn't understand the meaning behind this, so I figured she was just saying, go ahead in a snobby way. So she goes, I don't know, can you? And I sat for a second and went, yes, got up and left. I was always a big fan of the, I don't know, that's why I'm asking you. I'm a funeral director. I hear the same jokes daily and have to pretend to laugh. The top one being, people are really dying to see you. I'm 6'5", and people love to ask what basketball team I play for. As I've learned on this thread, you should ask which horse they ride. When you're a quiet person and someone, usually an older adult, says something along the lines of, you're talking so much, we need to shut you up. They act as if you haven't put up with that kind of joke your entire life. As a quiet person, I hate this comment so much. Like, what did they expect me to say back to that? So I remain quiet, with that painful grin and chuckle thing going on. Just waiting for something interesting enough to respond to. What time is it? Time for you to get a watch. Time for you to get a new joke. Customer hands me a $100 bill. I hold it up to the light to check for the watermark. Customer, I just made it this morning. 3 hours and 1 reporter and news crew standing outside my job later. Reporter, and here we are on the scene where an employee strangled a customer with a $100 bill. I made it this morning. Slowly picks up phone, dials police. Hi, I have a guy here who just admitted to printing counterfeit currency. Can you guys pick him up for questioning? That was funny. You got me. Aren't you going to give me my change? Sir, just hang tight. The police are on their way. Please don't make any sudden movements. Item doesn't scan. Oh, it's free! I wonder if these comedians say this at the self-checkout as well. The other day I was checking out and one of my items had no price on it. So the cashier asked me if I had noticed what the price was. I hadn't noticed the price, so I figured she'd just send someone to look. Instead she said, well, guess it's free then, and put it in a bag. I'm pretty sure she broke Reddit by doing that, since everything I've read on here says this situation is just a bad joke. As someone in a marching band, I'm tired of most people replying with, "There's one time at band camp," whenever I mention it. What's up? The sky. I usually say my cholesterol. Is that okay? My risk of violent suicide. Neighbors who see you doing any kind of chore and say, "Oh, you're going to do my laundry too?" Or, "You're going to mow my lawn while you're at it?" Or, "What did you get me at the supermarket?" Not funny the first time, still not funny the 100th time. Is there anything else I can do for you today, sir? Yes, you could get me a cheeseburger, the winning lottery numbers. The next time someone says winning lottery numbers to you, respond by saying, "If I had the winning numbers, I would not be here talking to you." I used to wait tables and people would say this to me all the time. Most people would laugh at the response. I don't ever remember anyone getting mad. Did you get your hair cut? No, I got them all cut. Ha 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 ha. It's not funny. I used to work with a guy who said this every time. So one time when I saw that he'd had a haircut, I said, "Hey, did you get all your hairs cut?" He said, "No, I..." Ha 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 ha. It was great. Making fun of someone's low-hanging fruit traits or obvious flaws, as if it's meant to be original and totally not something that person is insecure about, since people constantly point it out to them. You sure are quiet, huh? Is the barber going to finish that haircut? First day on the job? I think this is a southern thing. In the men's restroom, if somebody comes in and all the urinals are taken, the guy says, "Yuck, yuck, looks like we got a full house." When someone new starts in the office or workplace and is getting introduced, "Don't worry, we'll test you on the names." Or on their second day, "Oh, you haven't run away yet?" What's the deal with airline food? Bad impersonation of the Seinfeld theme. I've had this happen to me more than twice this week. Anything involving my mother? Unless it's a Napoleon Dynamite reference. Your mom went to college? I ask someone if they need a cup holder in the drive-thru. Points at girlfriend next to them. "Nah, I already got one." Be named Nicholas. "Well, old Saint Nick, where's my presents?" "Nick, Nickelodeon." "Hey, Nicole, when are you getting a haircut?" I'm a server part-time, and it never fails when I ask if a table is ready for their check. They respond, "No, you can keep it." Ha ha ha. Or some variation of that. Just give them finger guns and say, "Ha ha." But for real though, I have kids to put through college. I usually respond with, "If I could afford to pay for your meal, I'd be eating with you, not serving you." Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they look at me like I'm crazy, but maybe that's the last time they say something to that effect. When random strangers learn that my child, who is blonde, blue-eyed, to my brown-eyed, was not adopted. "Milkman's baby, eh?" No, I didn't sleep around to produce her. It's called recessive genes. That's basic genetics that you should have learned about starting in middle school, and then at least once more in high school biology. But thanks for casually insulting my morals and integrity. Is there anything else I can help you with? Do you have next week's winning lottery numbers? Ugh, as a server I hear that one all the time. A pet peeve of mine. T-Rex jokes. The "haha, T-Rex have tiny arms" was funny the first time. But now if you see something involving this dinosaur, you already know the punchline. Just find something new already, please. T-Rexes always have terrible punchlines. It's the limited reach that hinders them. I don't hear it all that often since exiting college, but any and all women's something kitchen jokes are particularly unfunny. Even a few chicks can't drive jokes get a giggle on occasion, but all the kitchen jokes start and end in the same place, and more often than not, the person telling the joke is the only one laughing. Got to at least be clever with your casual misogyny, kids. I'm a fan of college softball. Every year during the Women's College World Series, it ended just last week actually, I see ESPN's or other sports companies' tweets about it, and almost every single time the tweets responding to it make unfunny jokes like, "Shouldn't they be in the kitchen?" It can be a video of some really awesome play, and I swear those comments get the most likes every single time. It's so annoying. The girls on the field are very good athletes, and people can't stop making stupid jokes about them in the kitchen that aren't even funny. Hot enough out there for you? Or the winter version, did you order all this snow? My name is Jake, and people like to refer to me as Jake from State Farm, which has reached its peak of annoyance in 2014, but it gets to the next level of annoying when they feel the need to recite the entire commercial and then ask me if I'm wearing khakis. Yes, I'm wearing khakis. I have a job and an office. Also, don't tell me that I sound hideous. It's not funny. It's just rude. I guess a more relatable one would be somebody asking, "Why didn't you bring me anything when I'm carrying my lunch?" That's what she said. Had gotten annoying 3 centuries before the invention of the wheel. Please stop. When used right, when it's not expected, or used too frequent, this line can still be funny. When I was in high school, our band director was really bad about setting up "that's what she said" jokes, but he would scream at us if anyone said it, so we decided to make a code. One snap as loud as you can was "that's what she said," and a quieter snap was meant as an acknowledgement. It would go something like this: "You have to just keep going. I don't care how tired you are or how sore your face is. Snap! Snap, 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 snap. Parades are serious. Not finishing isn't an option. Snap! Snap, 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 snap. This is our chance to show the public what we've got, and if it isn't perfect, blah, 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 blah." Referring to Target as Target. That only works when it's followed up with "it's French for Walmart," but that loses its charm after the 3rd time or so. Jokes about me shooting up and being a drug addict when I'm injecting insulin has stopped being funny around about the 1st time. After 9 years, I can't even pretend to laugh anymore. I work maintenance, so when I'm painting or shoveling snow or something that can be equated to a household chore, "Why don't you come by my place next and you can do that thing for me?" I've come up with the perfect retort. "Let me show you my paycheck and we can negotiate from there." New Year's Eve. "See you next year." "No,